and I will ask Alex McManus if he would like to read the roll.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Raymond Bremner.
I think Councillor Bremner has indicated that he's going to be a bit late, but he will be joining us soon.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Donny Mackay. Councillor Donny Mackay. Councillor Willie Mackay.
Here.
Councillor Struan Mackey.
Present, Alex.
Councillor Matthew Rees.
Good morning, Alex. Present.
Councillor Carl Rosie.
Good morning, everyone. Present.
Councillor Andrew Sinclair.
Morning, Alex. Yes.
And Councillor Nicola Sinclair.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on to declarations of interest. I just need to note that Anne has had to be taken away on, she's got some urgent business to attend to. So if anybody has sent declarations of interest in advance, they won't have been received or passed on. So if you do have a declaration of interest to make with respect to any items on the agenda, please raise your electronic hand. I myself would like to declare an interest non-financial in item 12, the Wick Common Good Asset Register, as a director of Wick's Heart, which is the development trust for Wick. Given that they're involved in town centre regeneration activities, that may be relevant to the item, so I'll declare an interest, but non-financial, and they'll be able to stay for the debate. Do we have any other declarations of interest? Okay. Members will move on to item 3, which is the minutes. They are circulated for noting minutes of the Caithness Committee held on 19th February 2020 and 6th July 2020, which were approved by the Council on 12th March and 30th July 2020 respectively. I trust you've all had a chance to read over the minutes. Does anybody have any issues with them that they would like to raise, or are we happy to approve? Yep, I'm seeing nods, so we're going to go with happy to approve. Move on to item 4, matters arising, and the action tracker, which is included as part of your papers. And Alex, would you like to take us through that?
Certainly, thank you, Chair. Okay, members, I'll take you on to page 18, an action from the meeting of 6 July 2020, appointment of chair and vice chairs. And it was agreed that the roles and responsibilities would be taken back to this meeting for formal agreement. I can now confirm that these roles and responsibilities have been drawn up, and I would like to just read them out to you if that's agreeable. You will recall that on the 6th of July, the Area Committee agreed that the structure would be a chair, a vice chair who would be the Provost of Thurso, and a second vice chair who would be the Provost of Wick. The role and responsibilities for the vice chair and Provost of Thurso and the Provost of Wick are very similar, so I will just read these out to you now, members. The role and description: to act as deputy to the chair of the Caithness Area Committee as required, to help develop and maintain effective relationships with partner organisations and agencies as appropriate, to provide strategic advice and input to the chair relating to Caithness strategy, and specifically to Thurso and North West Caithness, and Wick and East Caithness, to raise and help manage issues and opportunities with the chair relating to Thurso and North West Caithness, and Wick and East Caithness, to represent Thurso and to represent Wick and Caithness on civic and ceremonial occasions to the Provost of Thurso and the Provost of Wick, including occasion of visits by ambassadors and consul generals, to promote Wick, Thurso and Caithness by hosting civic events and raising the profile of Thurso, Wick and Caithness, including through public appearances and the media, to maintain the highest standards of conduct and ensure public confidence in the functions of the provostship. This role is voluntary and will not be remunerated. So the recommendation, members, is that you agree to the roles and responsibilities of the Vice Chairs and Provost of Wick and Thurso as presented. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much, Alex. And can I just ask if everyone's happy to approve that, or does anyone have any comments or changes to suggest?
Agreed, Nicola.
Excellent. Alex, there's also the other item on recognition of community achievement.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It was also agreed that the Caithness Committee would look at recognising community achievement, looking for awards of a scheme that has been established and runs similarly in the areas of Skye and Nairn, and looking for nominations in categories for arts and sports, environment, health, education, community, enterprise, young people. Criteria we would be looked at would be that nominees must be residents in Caithness or can demonstrate that actions or activities have resulted in a significant benefit to the population of Caithness, and as such would be eligible for civic recognition from the ward, and be nominated for voluntary effort. Nominations for the award in respect of paid members of staff will not be eligible. Decision-making process, nominations will be considered by the Caithness elected members, ward manager and community representatives for each of the categories already mentioned. And that is now in its infancy and will be taken forward for further consideration by members. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex. So there's obviously a little bit more discussion to be had to flesh out this idea. And I would propose that we don't try to do that today, but we accept the outline that's been provided for us and have a separate meeting to bring that forward in more detail. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Okay, Alex, when looking at the rest of the action tracker, I think I would just suggest that we've got a lot of old actions on there that have been superseded in recent months. So I would suggest that any older actions should just be removed to tidy it up a little bit, and we keep any more recent or important outstanding actions. So could I leave that with you to look through it?
Yeah, I'll take a note for that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and just also because the committee structure and the community recognition paper was provided to members separately to the agenda that was published on the website, it's just to confirm that that'll be made available to the public as well as part of the wider papers in the minutes, and you're nodding, so that's fine. Excellent, thanks very much. I'll move on then, members, unless anyone has any points to make. Okay. So item 5, we have notices of motion. Actually, I'm not sure if I need to copy and paste it in the meeting chat if it was part of the minuted papers, but we have a motion in support of John O'Groats Airport, which is proposed by myself and seconded by Councillor Mackie. Members, today's motion sees us stand alongside our public and private sector partners in underlining the critical role of Wick John O'Groats Airport in the economy of Caithness and indeed Highland. In preparing this motion, I thought a lot about how Wick came to have an airport at all. It's well known that the airfield at Wick, like our harbours, was strategically important in World War II. I was interested to read recently about the airport, which led to the capture of German warships and ultimately helped prevent the invasion of the North Atlantic. It's something I didn't know about, and it was quite interesting to note to me that Wick Airport has always been important to the fortunes, not just of Caithness, but of Scotland and of the UK more broadly. And today, of course, we're fighting a very different kind of battle against COVID-19, which sadly has provided the backdrop to the recent collapse, first of our services to Edinburgh and then later our flights to Aberdeen. Nobody saw the pandemic coming, but it's fair to say that the stakeholders in Caithness were aware of the threat to the airport for many months. We observed declining passenger numbers and issues with scheduling, reliability and affordability, and it's to their credit that Caithness Chamber of Commerce, CNSRP and our other partners were drafting contingency plans as far back as April 2019. So that when we did hit the point of commercial failure, which is sadly where we are now, the business case for a public service obligation was ready to go. And I think business case is the key phrase here. This is not an approach to the Scottish Government to bail out an unsustainable PSO for Wick John O'Groats Airport is an investment in Caithness, it's an investment in Highland, and it's an investment in our ambitions towards a greener economy. The figures in the business case make this clear. A PSO would require an annual subsidy of £3 million over 4 years, which at £67 per passenger is considerably cheaper than the next lowest in Scotland, which is £82 per passenger, Dundee to Stansted. It's projected to attract 41 to 46,000 passengers a year by year 4 and deliver 5.2 million in economic benefit against the initial outlay of 3 million. A PSO for Wick John O'Groats Airport is also crucial to our post-Dounreay economy. The airport is required throughout the decommissioning process, and it will be even more important in the diversification of the economy after Dounreay. It will support the development of onshore and offshore wind, wave and tidal opportunities in the Pentland Firth, of which we will hear more later today. The significant redevelopment of our harbours, the UK vertical launch spaceport, expanded manufacturing and offer equality of access to the Central Belt and beyond for our business sector. The airport is a catalyst for between 400 and 600 local jobs, including 60 at the airport itself, and it's essential to our ability to recruit and retain staff and export our unique skills. Crucially, the airport also reduces the perception of our remoteness and rurality. Currently, journey times to Aberdeen or Edinburgh are 8 to 10 hours by public transport or 5 to 7 hours by car, and a day return is not possible, adding significant costs in overnight accommodation for business travel. In describing our economic growth prospects today, many of the examples I've included are in renewable and emerging energy and technology. Our Caithness vision refers to Caithness as the energy county, and this sector is part of our post-nuclear landscape. As such, it's only right that the business case for our airport seeks to position it as the first net zero carbon PSO scheduled service in the UK. In line with Scottish Government policy, an investment in the airport is an investment in the decarbonisation of transport, and it also reflects the commitments made public by Highland Council in declaring a climate emergency. We'll hear in Caithness Committee today about a range of topics important to Caithness, from the growth of renewables to the recovery and resilience of our community. None of that can be achieved without a show of confidence in Caithness and positive, decisive action to stem the decline. Caithness Area Committee should be instrumental in that. So as Chair, I'm bringing this motion to Committee and onward to full Council on the 29th, and I know we're united in support of that. I'll now invite Councillor Mackey to speak.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I would just like to start off by thanking the Chair on her efforts on this matter today, and indeed what I believe has been a quite unique united front from across the whole of the Caithness Committee, shown not only in the last number of days, weeks, but now, as the Chair indicated, months. Coming from a business background, for over 5 years as a consultant to industry, I was a regular on red-eye flights, flying across the UK and sometimes further afield to carry out work. Regular scheduled flights made this possible, and as the Chair has already indicated, it is an absolutely integral asset that we must have in order to rebuild and also take advantage of some of the key opportunities that exist in the area. For Caithness, the business attractiveness and capability relies heavily on connectivity, and I believe, as the Chair has indicated shortly before myself, that Wick John O'Groats Airport can play a key role in adding to the attractiveness in the area and also helping us retain some of the fantastic businesses that we have here, the skills and the people. The additional benefit of this, of course, is that it will allow visitors some certainty around about regular, scheduled and on-time flights, which we simply have not had for the last number of years. I believe that the way that the Caithness members and indeed the Caithness stakeholders across the piece have gone about trying to reinstate flights to Wick John O'Groats Airport has been the right one. Over the last number of months, the Chamber of Commerce took the lead, and I've put forward a business case that I believe is very, very robust. The next part of this is then making that case to those who can fund it, and I believe it's completely right and completely proper that we not only go to Scottish Government, who obviously have the transport remit for the region and for the country, but also to the Highland Council ourselves and look at the possibilities. One of the things that I've stressed in a piece to the press that hopefully will be going out on Friday is that I view Wick John O'Groats Airports very much as part of our COVID-19 recovery. It can be a key strategic asset, not just for Caithness, but for the region, and one that we can use to promote what I believe is already a fantastic place to do business, and hopefully somewhere that more people can come, stay, and also employ. So on the basis that I believe that we have already gone about the PSO in the right way, and the next steps very much are to make this kind of public statement today and public commitment that we want to reimagine the possible, I second this motion alongside Councillor Sinclair and hope that it receives the full support, as it has done previously, of Caithness Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Mackie. Would anyone else like to speak on this item? I don't have any hands up currently. Councillor Rees.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just a very quick point. I think sometimes for members of the public watching, some of the phrases that we use unavoidably are a bit of a mystery. Things like PSO even, we've become familiar with them, but we're also on a learning curve with all this. But to sort of drill down to the very basic points, when I first started looking at this, probably several years ago, one fact that jumped out to me was, frankly, that if Campbellton and Dundee can have PSOs, it seemed obvious geographically that Caithness was just as deserving. That's the first point. The second, and it may be, well, it is the case that they have different financial backgrounds, but the sort of geographical fact remains. So I fully support this motion. The second point really is coming to the financing side of it. It's a very general point, but really the sum of money that is required is relatively a drop in the North Sea compared to some of the big infrastructure projects. I think I saw just in the last couple of days an anticipated cost for dueling the A96 of about 3 billion, and it's great to consider these big projects. But my point is, although Caithness has a relatively small population, if you look at it in percentage terms, the amount of money that we need to run this PSO is actually quite small in the big picture. So I really hope that the different organisations that will be asked to contribute towards this and put it in perspective, and this project to get the PSO will bring so much benefit to the county in many different ways. And Chair, you used the phrase perception of remoteness, and that's key to this, that there's no need for that perception. If we can get the airport up and running with a good, clean, modern service, it will be so beneficial for everybody living in the county and indeed beyond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rees. I've got Councillor Rosie next.
Thank you, Chair. And quite simply, just to lend my support and thank both yourself and Councillor Mackie for your comments, and indeed everyone else that's been involved in progressing matters so far. So look forward to seeing us establish a sustainable and profitable route over the coming years. And again, just thank everyone. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Rosie. I don't have any more hands up. However, I note that Councillor Bremner has now joined us. Just want to check Councillor Bremner's here and he can hear us and his hand's gone up. Yep, Councillor Bremner.
Yeah, my hand's gone up because there's no way I would miss this. I do apologise for my lateness. It was unavoidable. But having just joined and hearing you all talking about the airport, I would consider that we are on the airport, the PSO motion, and I've been very much involved in that. I'm the councillor that is on the Joint Consultative Committee for Wick John's Airport. So, needless to say, I'll be supporting this motion very much. So, I haven't heard what everybody else has said, and I don't want to be repeating it. All I'll say is that it has been well noted, the progress and, well, the challenges, first of all, noted at the Wick John O'Groats Consultative Committee that we've been tackling over the past couple of years, and certainly since the time that I've been part of the committee. I'm sure that Councillor Mackay may have spoken already, but that's because we also know all of the issues that we have been dealing as part of the connectivity of Caithness through the Caithness Transport Forum. So these matters are well noted in the public domain, and the challenges that we've been facing in terms of the connectivity and the economic impact that we may well face because of the challenges that our airport is facing. And those challenges aren't just challenges to do with airlines. Those challenges are to do with the whole viability of managing an airport going forward. There is commercial activity that goes on from that airport, and there are other stakeholders in it who maybe use it infrequently, but nevertheless use it by necessity. And on top of that, the fact that we have the issues with our connectivity to much bigger hubs, including Edinburgh, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen and beyond. These are challenges that are always facing rural communities, especially communities that are facing population decline. But these are things that are foremost in our minds, and that is one of the reasons that we must and we need to commit to this here. I know that those challenges have been well noted in terms of the challenges to the airlines, but with everybody at the table, and that means everybody, and everybody contributing by bringing something to the table. Hopefully, we'll corporately get an answer here, and this motion captures all of that. I know it will go to council, and I'm certainly hoping that we have the ability to be able to persuade and lobby the council to understand the necessity for this motion to be supported by the entire council. So, yep, it has my support, and just so that everything that everybody else has said, and I probably have. But there we go. So thanks very much, Chair, and once again, apologies for this.
Thanks, Councillor Bremner. Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, Raymond, I hadn't actually spoken because everything was said so eloquently there by the Chair and Struan. Absolutely fantastic. There's no doubt about it. One thing I'm pretty proud of, and we all are pretty proud of, the fact that Wick, I've said this before, and it's the only town in the entire north of Scotland where you can reach by road, rail, sea or air. It really is unique, and I think we're all pretty proud of that fact, and I'm pretty confident that it will continue to be. So thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Mackay. I don't see any more hands up, so members, are we content to approve the motion?
Content.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much. We'll move on to item number 6, which is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Local Performance Report. The committee is invited to comment on and scrutinise the attached area performance report. As usual, I'll assume that you've all read the report, and I'll ask Jim Donaldson to provide us with a brief presentation. Please, Jim. Okay, Jim isn't appearing on my list of attendees, so I'm wondering if he's been held up. Alex, do we have any note or message from Jim, or shall I just move on and come back to that agenda item later?
I have no notification from Jim at all, Chair. I would suggest that you do as you've said, move on to the next item, please.
Yeah, okay, I think that's best. That's fine. In that case, we'll move on to item 7, which is Cymric Atlantis, and we have Sean Parsons here to give us a presentation. Sean, thanks very much for taking the time to join us this morning. We're all really looking forward to hearing from you. So if you could give us an overview, and then we'll move to questions and comments from the members, please.
Yeah, of course, and thank you, Chair, and thanks all members for this opportunity. It was probably just as I started with Atlantis that I presented with Tim and spoke to you all, and heard the huge support, and I'm very pleased that has continued. I wasn't planning on doing much of a presentation. I'll just do a short update on some of the areas that we've been progressing since we last spoke, but really focus on opportunity to answer your questions and focus on that. The main piece of activity that we have been working on in NIG for the Maygen project is the delivery of the subsea hub, which I'm very pleased to say was completed on time and is now operating as it should, which is great news. For those who don't remember, the hub was a project funded in part by Scottish Government, that saw a hub being built that enabled multiple turbines to be connected to one hub that then had one export cable going to shore. The reason why this was so important is it dramatically reduces the cost of future projects. This is all about unlocking and driving down the cost for Maygen Phase 2. So really pleased to have got that delivered. The other really exciting piece of work that's been going on, and it's a testament to the amazing team in NIG and all the workers from the area, is that they've been building and have now got on a boat, and it's now on its way to Japan, which is Japan's first tidal stream turbine. It's a great achievement and a great testament to the opportunity that tidal stream presents to the Highlands, to Scotland and to the UK, which is the opportunity to actually own and export this technology. So these turbines was designed, manufactured, put together in NIG during these challenging times, and is now being shipped off to Japan, where we hope it will be installed by the end of the year, is our target. It's got a long way to travel with multiple stops, but it's by the end of the year it should be operating, and hopefully that will give Japan the data, the reassurance that they need so that they can place more orders and we can start exporting and manufacturing even more of these turbines for them, which will be fantastic. That's what we've kind of been doing in terms of activity actually on site, and I was very pleased, by the way, and honoured that some of you were able to visit the site and see some of that activity firsthand. It was extremely well received by the team locally and wider as well, to have that support, so thank you again for that. In terms of unlocking the further extension of the project, taking Maygen, which, let's not forget, the largest tidal stream project in the world. You know, a milestone reached recently was 30 gigawatt hours of power exported to the grid. That's around about 50% of the world's total tidal stream project. So when we talk about tidal stream, you're talking about Maygen, really. It's a fantastic achievement. But we want to take that further, and data shows the huge opportunity for scale of this technology. And phase 2 of Maygen will see it go from 6 megawatts, 4 turbines, to 86 megawatts. And we've been working hard to unlock that. As I said, the subsea hub was a key part of helping demonstrate that we can drive down the cost. The big barrier has been, and this is what stalled tidal development projects all around the world, was the government's pulling of support, the subsidy for it. Now, very recently, the government has launched consultation on future tidal projects and the future of marine energy in the UK. And one of the areas that it asked about was the support mechanism needed to unlock the future of tidal. There was a lot of discussion amongst the industry, but we're very pleased that we managed to get to a united voice that called for government to set aside a minima in the contract for different allocation round that's due to take place next year. Now, what that means is that we're asking for government to specifically allow for a set amount of tidal project to go ahead. It will not have to compete with offshore wind and established technologies, and it can ensure that that technology is able to compete amongst itself, so other tidal stream projects, but it unlocks it and allows it to go forward. If government were to allow that, that would unlock Maygen Phase 2. So it's a really significant step forward. We're obviously now very much liaising, speaking with government, making the case for that, demonstrating the opportunity it presents for the local region. Having the local support is obviously a key factor for that, and government hearing loud and clear that there is cross-party unanimous support for this locally and nationally as well. But that is the area that we've been really pushing in terms of Westminster and unlocking the power. The other side that I know Tim's talked to you about, and we talked about when we had our visit as well, is this project is unique because it's not just about the power. It's not just about delivering renewable infrastructure. It's about what that power can unlock as well. And we've identified this huge opportunity, which is what we've called McCloud, which is this opportunity to unlock digital infrastructure. It's an area in a recent Scottish Government report was highlighted as a real gap for Scotland in terms of its digital infrastructure. It's an area of huge opportunity and huge expanse as well. The figures in terms of during COVID, the demand for increased data storage is huge. The challenge and why it's such a huge opportunity for us and for the area is they are very, very energy hungry beasts. So to meet the carbon requirements that we've set, both internationally and as a country, we need to find ways to partner them with renewable power, and Tidal is a fantastic pairing for that. So we've been identifying ways that we can do that, and one of the key areas we've started discussions with government with unlocking the two areas: the international connectivity and infrastructure and the local connectivity and infrastructure. And the international is absolutely key, and that comes about with the Celtic North project that is actually targeted to come in Caithness right by our project, which will connect Scotland with Norway, Ireland and the US. So to bring that cable onto Scotland, and then to look at building what we call a pyramid, which will see the Caithness northern tip of that pyramid, and then 2 other data centres in the central belts to enable that kind of pyramid of connectivity in Scotland. So they're the areas that I just kind of wanted to touch on. It's very whistle stop. I appreciate. I've obviously talked about a lot in some areas that I'm sure you've got more questions on. But what I wanted to say is, just in summary, that since we last spoke, and in terms of CIMEC Atlantis and Maygen and our activities in the Highlands, we've been making huge, continuing the operation of Maygen to continue its world-leading position in tidal energy, in terms of working from an engineering and construction point of view to unlock growth and further opportunities for investment and job creation. We've looked at unlocking international export and opportunities, and then also the other bits in terms of what more we can do to unlock that project at scale. I hope that's an okay summary, and I look forward to any questions, comments, thoughts that you councillors have, and thank you again.
Thanks very much for that, Sean. That was a really helpful and succinct overview, and I just wanted to add thanks for hosting us at NIG. It was a really informative day, and I know we all got a lot out of it, so we appreciated you making the time to do that. Can I come to Councillor Rosie?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sean, for your presentation. It was very informative and useful as always. Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to propose a motion which I've posted in the chat. Perhaps, if you would like, you can go to the other members. There may be questions, and then I can return and speak to the motion. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Bremner.
Thanks very much, Sean. And thanks for the previous chats that you've had with us as well. It's been very much appreciated. Some of us are not so up to speed as the like of Councillor Rosie, but we all take leads on various projects. That's what works for Caithness. We can't all be masters of everything. So in fact, everything, and we have 1 or 2 masters in about it. But thanks very much for the discussions that you've had with us. You presented really well, and you enthuse people about the project, and that's great, because it makes it it makes us enthusiastic about our own area. We like people talking about Caithness, and we like people talking about investing in Caithness. It ticks the boxes of us, and it also ticks the boxes of everybody that lives in our area. Sometimes we think that we're the forgotten area up here. Well, actually, at council right now, we're anything but the forgotten area. I think they're probably sick of hearing about us, but you know, that's our job. I'd like to ask you, can you give us just a very brief overview of some of the multiple challenges that have been faced trying to develop this kind of technology and securing investment? Because the people of Caithness have known about trying to invest in tidal energy for some time, as have other areas. So it's been quite competitive, but very unique in certain areas. Can you give us just a very, very brief overview of what those challenges have been?
Yeah, of course. And thank you for your kind words. I am enthused. I genuinely left working for obviously one of the shareholders of Atlantis, and one that's continued a global meteoric rise, because I believed in this project and our Asthma project. I've developed energy projects across the country, from nuclear projects at Hinkley Point. I worked on that from the start, to offshore wind, onshore wind and solar. And I'm so passionate about the role that Tidal should be playing. You talk about the challenges, partly it's mindset. It's always been seen, and this, I hold my hands up, is from and my frustration, and I touched on it a little in terms of our response to the consultation, in terms of trying to get an industry perspective. It amazed me, even the own industry's perception of itself, of the technology of tomorrow. You know, one of the things that I've heard time and time again is the number of communities, when I've gone to build onshore, offshore wind, that hate the look of them. We don't build them here, we want them here. Why don't you build tidal? And it's amazing, and you keep saying to them, look, we would, but it's not ready yet. It's 10 years away, it's 5 years away. And what I kind of really admire about Tim and Atlantis is it's not the technology of tomorrow. You have a technology delivering today, right now, in the waters off your beautiful area, is a tidal array. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is getting people's mindset change, that this is no longer a technology of tomorrow. Maygen Phase 2 can deliver tidal at scale at a competitive price for consumers. It's as simple as that. And while offshore wind might be cheaper, and I'm very proud to have worked in the offshore wind industry, let's not forget the simple fact of every pound that we subsidise, we spend on offshore wind, 30 or 35% of that stays in the UK. 65%, 70% of that goes abroad, because you don't make the turbines here. You don't have the supply chain here. We buy it from other countries with all the jobs. Flip that round with tidal, it's 80-85% UK content. These turbines are made here, and I believe that as an industry we are on the cusp. If we get that scale here in the Highlands, in Scotland, in the UK, the supply chain will stay here, because it's inevitable. You will build them where the scale projects are, and then we export. Then when Japan wants to build a tidal array, the cheapest turbines are the ones that are already built, and they'll be ours. And that is the opportunity. That is what fires me up from a family of engineers. And I have worked in energy generation projects. I want those jobs here. I believe that we can do it. And so, in terms of challenges, that's probably one of my biggest ones, is convincing people, investors, government, that this isn't a long-term, let's build another tester project. When you go to the guys at NIC, it really does, they make me laugh. They are amazing, but they're like, we don't need another tester project. If they came to me today, I'll put a turbine in the water tomorrow. Simple as that. And they're like, it frustrates me almost, because we're so on the cusp. And I just think if we can get behind it, convince people that this is not a future, you know, odd turbine here, odd turbine there, handful of jobs here, handful of jobs there. You know, we're now at the next phase, and you're talking 150 plus jobs, and that's just direct jobs. You know, let alone all the opportunities that come with the digital infrastructure and all those elements as well, and all the opportunities as it grows as an industry and everything else. So I do think that in terms of sorry, a long ramble, but in your securing investment, absolutely, I see that, and that is a big one. That is around giving certainty, a long-term certainty of these projects and of the opportunity. So the biggest thing that scares investors is that shift in policies that will mean that this technology doesn't go ahead. And that is, again, about reassurance. One of the unique, I would say, elements of developing this project, and with such a supportive community behind it, which is amazing, is you do get that reassurance for a long-term appetite for this. What I hope now is that we get from Westminster the signals that give us that long-term trajectory that will reassure investors, and we can then just get going, get building. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that answers my question. I'll second the motion, subject to the fact that Sean Parsons gets to present Highland Council.
That'd be good. Councillor Rees.
Yes, I'm happy to second or third that motion, whichever way it is. Sean, I can almost sort of virtually feel your enthusiasm sort of zooming up towards Thurso right now as you're speaking, and you mentioned you're a bit frustrated, talked about the supportive community, and I kind of think those two things sum it up pretty well. I offer my full support. Why do I do that as a councillor? Because to be quite blunt, from a democratic angle, there's been virtually nobody has really voiced opposition to turbines in the Pent and Firth, and as you alluded to, that's in stark contrast to some of the renewable projects that are very, very clearly visible. And I think it was only 2 days ago there was a very impassioned debate about an onshore wind farm at which I was speaking, but then Councillor Bremner, and I quote him more or less exactly, said he wanted to put me out of my misery, which he did by not just supporting but going further than what I was saying, I think, which was great to see councillors working together. I woke up this morning to hear the very concerning news about BiFab. My heart goes out to the folk who may well be affected by that bad news. And you look at the fact that these devices, the turbines, are available right here on our doorstep, almost literally. I wasn't able to go to the visit down the road, but I'm aware of what you're doing, and I just simply offer my full-blooded support and anything we can continue to do to help. I know the chair's been very instrumental in, with Councillor Rosie, in moving this forward. I share your frustration, but I also would like to stress in my next phrase, the community here is incredibly innovative. There's a great pool of engineering talent in Caithness and Sutherland. Let's go for it, and good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rees. I have Councillor Mackay now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Sean, for that. Having grown up by the seaside myself, very interested in tide and always have been. Congratulations on your contract to Japan. Just looking at my notes here, I see South Korea are producing something like 511 megawatts. France is second with 246 megawatts. The UK 139 megawatts. This is a fantastic carbon-free technology, but I see all too often that tidal stream turbines are often linked and referred to the wind power industry of 20 years ago. What do you think of that comment? I don't particularly like it myself.
So were you saying, what do I think of the comment that Tidal is seen as the wind industry 20 years ago? Sorry, I missed the question, sorry.
Yeah, that is the comments I hear about this fantastic technology you have on our doorstep, that the expensive turbines and the hurdles that you have got to overcome are often referred to wind turbines as wind power industry of some 20 years back.
Yeah, okay. So actually, some of you might not look, but worked in the wind industry 20 years back, I can say this is not the wind industry 20 years back. There are similarities though, and I'm a firm believer in learning lessons from the past and from other industries as well, and sharing those things. What the wind industry did brilliantly was arguably drive down that cost of energy that made it so palatable. However, as I highlighted, my big frustration coming from that is without the supply chain. You know, all the focus was on cost of energy, and what that meant was that state supported either Asian or Scandinavian, Nordic countries basically supported their industries, and that is where the supply chain is, and it's cheaper for us to go to those countries and buy that tech and everything else. But what that means is we don't get the jobs, we don't get the investment, we don't get the opportunities that comes with it. So I actually say that the onshore wind industry, the offshore wind industry, actually I look at them and say, yes, we've got to drive down costs, but we've got to learn the lesson, which is we've got to also own that and be at the forefront, be the pioneers of it. And that is currently where we're at. We are the largest. We are delivering this, and not just the UK, specifically the Highlands. So I really think is fascinating. I also want to just say to you now, and just to break this perception of it being expensive. You know, I mean, let's take a step back. Is it more expensive now to buy a tidal stream turbine than a wind turbine? Yes, but the economies of scale are absolutely different. An amazing fact is that the tidal stream cost curve was falling faster than the wind cost curve before the subsidies were pulled. So the reality is this is an industry that is driving down cost. Maygen phase 2 will be sub £100 a megawatt. It will be, and bearing in mind, we're talking one of the first scale projects in the world, and it's already a price that is going to be probably parallel with a Hinkley Point, and nuclear's being built at scale for decades. So it gives you an idea. Again, going back to what you talked about, the question from Councillor Bramer was around the challenges, and you highlight just that. It's the perception. You know, this, oh, tidal's the technology of tomorrow. Tidal's too expensive. Wind's cheaper, but wind is intermittent. You know, let's be clear. And again, this is not me criticising. And please, I apologise. I don't mean to just say wind's bad and everything else is bad and tidal's great. All of them have their challenges, but one of the problems with wind and solar is its unpredictability. Tidal stream is completely predictable. As someone from both side by side, as a trader and as an optimizer from a power side, it's a dream, because I know from a power generation side, if I'm trying to balance my flow into the grid and to an end user, I can literally go, I know exactly when slack tide is, when power's going to drop, and if you've got a battery, say, I know exactly the size of the battery needed, and I can reduce the cost, the capex spend to buy a battery, because I only need exactly this amount of battery. So you have complete predictability. You know, our availability rate at Maygen is unbelievable. It's like high 90%, whereas winds are in 30s. So the problem, again, when you go to wind and solar, is you can have the wind blowing for 3 weeks. You can have it not blowing for 3 weeks. So how do you put storage with that? You can't. It's so hard to do. Almost all battery storage now with wind and solar is grid services. You're not actually generating and offering a continuous power supply. You've still got the intermittency. It's almost impossible to solve unless you get batteries, which are just so inefficient because they have to be so large. So I absolutely would say, going back to your point about this wind v tidal debate, and we're 20 years behind them. Absolutely not. The fundamentals of what Tidal can offer are far outweigh the negatives. It is just as simple as that. Tidal will be a solution to meet 2050 net zero. Absolutely. You can't do it without it. The simple question is do you want the supply chain and jobs here, or are we going to be buying turbines from somewhere else? And that to me is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Sean. It was a very passionate response. Councillor Rees, you've already spoken, and can you please keep it brief?
Yes, I will, Chair. Thank you for letting me back in. I will be very brief. Sean, I can almost sort of feel your zeal increasing even further if that was possible. You don't need to convince me. Obviously, you say you're anxious not to criticise other sectors of renewables, and totally get that, and that's fine. As councillors, we're sort of free to praise and criticise in equal measure. And part of the debate I briefly referred to with Councillor Bremner a couple of days ago actually was about birds and about golden eagles. Now, obviously, they don't fly over the Pent and Firth, but sea eagles do fly from Hoy to Caithness across the Pent and Firth, and it's just one small example. Obviously, if there's no obstruction in their way, that's great. Caithness, the tourism we have here, there are people who come regularly to the county to see all the different types of bird that we have, especially out in the flow country and on the cliffs. And I've only once heard one criticism, and maybe this is a bit unfair asking you without any warning. If you may not know the answer to this question, it's fine, but I've heard there is only one bird that can potentially dive deep enough to have any chance of being affected by your turbines, and that is a bird which I don't know much about, but it's called a black-throated guillemot. If you're able to say that even that bird is not really at risk from your turbines, I think my kind of enthusiasm would be 100%. It's already 95%, and I really do offer my full support. It's just one little question. Again, I think you mentioned about the economics of this and the efficiency of underwater turbines. The constraints payments, as I'm sure you're aware, for wind are approaching £1 billion now, and the economic argument for what you've put forward is, to my mind, complete. It's almost impossible to argue against it. But that's my one small question, and if you can't answer it, that's fine. Chair, thank you for letting me back.
I'm impressed that I didn't get the full name, but the black guillemot gets 5% of your support. That's the swing factor on it. I know this is being recorded, and I won't profess to know the dive in depths and impact of the guillemot. I will definitely check for you though. The team will love that. Just on the environmental impact though, it is an important question more broadly. We actually partnered with I can't remember which one, but a Scottish university for them to peer review all our environmental impact reports, which they have been working on brilliantly with us. And I spoke at international conference this week actually, and talking about partnership with government and partnerships with academia. And this was obviously a brilliant case study, and talked about the council and local support, but also that academic support in terms of it, an opportunity for them to be part of this and do that. I hasten to add, it's one of those challenges of the technology, and as we learn lessons, and environmental impact is a key one, because you've always got to be learning and adapting. I should say, from speaking to the guys just a few weeks ago actually, so you asked me this question 3 weeks ago, I'd have completely blank-faced, but we did actually talk about this recently, and they were saying that they've had, with the environmental impact assessments that we've been getting, we've had some initial findings back from the university, are really positive in terms of when the turbines are operating. Obviously we've got cameras there that pick it up, and mammal sea life stay clear. It's one of those things that obviously that's a big concern around that, and the reports are actually fantastic. So again, another example of as we get more data, we can reassure people around it, and that is something that very much. But Councillor, I will come back to you on the guillemot though.
Thank you very much, and you're quite right. It's not a black-throated guillemot; it's a black guillemot. I was getting my divers and my guillemots muddled up. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mackie.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll just keep it very, very brief. Unfortunately, I'm probably unable to provide any clarity on the Black Guillemot either, but my point is more around about the wider energy policy, and I welcome the motion that's been submitted by Councillor Rosie and indeed seconded by Councillor Bremner, because I think the last part of it around about the minima is incredibly important, and it's my opinion, and it's been a long-standing opinion, that energy policy in the UK is completely broken, and I think that we need to take on individual bits of the challenges that we can, and I think that we've got a very, very clear and concise reason why we think that this particular part of the energy policy is broken, because we can see the impact that it would have locally if it was changed. And the other element of this, whenever we're talking about energy production or policy, is the impact of good energy policy on our local community. And if we, whether we talk here around about Tidal or indeed elsewhere, that will have a direct impact on our constituents, because I still find, and I know it's a slight tangent, Chair, so I apologise, but I still find it completely disgraceful that we could have people in fuel poverty when we have such an asset on our doorstep, and until we fix the energy policy in this country, that will continue to be something that I find quite shameful. But thank you very much, Sean. As ever, the visit was fantastic down to Nig, really enthusiastic coming away, and I think there's bits and pieces that we can take on board. Thank you for your contribution, and indeed for Councillor Rosie for bringing what I think is a powerful but considered motion that I think reflects absolutely what we want to see on the ground. So thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Councillor Mackie. Sean, I wanted to ask a question just briefly. You touched on public perceptions, and I wanted to ask you particularly about the data centre proposal. What sort of thinking about public perception here and the benefits for Caithness, could you outline briefly, just for anybody that might be watching, what the data centre you feel would deliver for Caithness? I mean, for me, it's about diversifying our economy and taking forward those skills. But in terms of supply chain and reputation, could you just give a brief summary of why we really want to have this here? And I think we're all very much supportive of it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I hold my hand up. It's a challenging one. The moment you get Cymec Atlantis Energy, which our strapline is, we are marine energy. Talking about a data center, immediately we get people looking at us going, well, you can imagine how that discussion went with our board and our investors as well. And as we walked them through it and you understand it, as I tried to do a bit briefly in the summary, it just makes a lot of sense in terms of piecing together those bits of the jigsaw. And again, coming back to your question in terms of the opportunity and benefits is, Scotland has a big deficiency in its data connectivity. So I think you're talking single-digit megawatt capacity for the whole of Scotland, whereas in Reading in England, you've got about 600 megawatts. You know, and it's been highlighted by recent reports and highlighted as an area for investment and growth, because it's what connectivity unlocks. So the direct benefits is almost less. It's much more around what having access to high speed international connectivity, what that unlocks. And I'll give you an example. I was reading the paper this morning, and they had interviews with different CEOs and chairmen from around the world, asking them if they could go back 6 months, start COVID, what they wish they would have done or known, and a couple of them said, I really wish I would have sorted out my broadband, because having 5 people all at home, all trying to access data is a massive drain. And that is what we are seeing. The boom in demand for data connectivity is huge. The challenge of not having it as well is, for example, the financial services sector, you know, has real limitations in where it can't be based in Scotland because it doesn't have access to that high speed international connectivity, whereas London does. areas like that, there are certain industries that simply can't go to Scotland because of its lack of that high-speed international connectivity. So it's quite a hard question to answer in terms of specifics. You know, you get McLeod and we deliver you Y. It's much more about, you can't have all these new jobs. Every person you speak to talks about where what the society is going to shift towards, and it's much more around connectivity, remote working, looking at flexible, all this access, you know, international data storage. It is absolutely what's going to be driving our economy forward for the foreseeable future. And unless it's addressed, you don't get that. So again, coming back to it, it's what do you want? You know, it's going to happen. It needs to be improved. Could we do it in Caithness? Could we do it in the Highlands? And that is what this project is all about. Is absolutely. And we've spoken to some of the biggest data center providers in the world, and when they hear about being able to have a data center with an international connectivity powered directly by renewable power, marine power, base load power, I mean, they're like, where do we sign up? So yeah, it does have significant opportunity. I'm sorry, I can't give you the direct GVA or jobs figures yet. We are working in partnership with TechRe in terms of pulling together more of that information, and as we develop that, I of course will continue to share that with you as the council, so that you have that information and you can be seeing what's needed. But hopefully I've kind of given you an idea of the inevitability and the need for it, and how that can be unlocked with this project.
Thanks, Sean. No, you've hit exactly on the point that was in the back of my mind, that when you see energy generation and data centre, I think for the public it's quite a hard sort of leap to make. So I think it was an important point to make about how you're building value and innovation off the back of your operations there, and that Caithness should absolutely be at the front of that. I don't see more hands up, so can I come back to Councillor Rosie if you'd like to speak to his motion, and I think Alex then will read it out for us.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you everyone for your contributions and your intent of support. It's absolutely fantastic. I know, or I suspect, you'll be glad to get this topic off the agenda. You've heard me speaking about it many times, but you know, the value it has been highlighted during our discussion today. Do you know what? I think it's worth mentioning, particularly for ourselves as councillors. My interest in this project was first piqued many years ago when a former councillor retold me a story about a then Caithness County Councillor in the 1950s. I believe his name was John S. Banks, and he lived in the John O'Groats area, who often made the case that if the power of the tidal energy in Pendleton Firth could be harnessed, Caithness would greatly benefit from it. You know, and when you think of that in the 1950s, a vision that John S. Banks had, and then link it up to the vision that's been shown by Magen, you know, Tim Cornelius, Sean Parsons of the world. It really is exciting. I think just to touch on the McLeod concept and data, again, it's worth observing our Norwegian neighbours. They now consider data to be the new oil and gas. So that shows you, you know, a level of opportunity and a scope of opportunity we've got. Absolutely fantastic. And when you link that into the challenges that we face in Caithness, here we're offering up a very unique selling point to you know, to address many of the challenges we've got. And I just think it's absolutely fantastic. So you know, and we already acknowledged that our vision as councillors, the county, again, we're ticking all the boxes here. So I really do look forward to seeing this progress. I think an important point too is that you know, we've already got an opportunity to explore how we can bring more of the elements of all of this project in the Caithness itself. I think there are already some discussions ongoing. And if phase 2's comes to fruition, I think it's around 15 full-time jobs it could create. So that's the type of contribution this is already making to some of the things that we need to do in Caithness. So finally, thank you again, Sean. Absolutely fantastic to always engage with you, and thank you, colleagues, for your support. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rosie. Alex, could you read the text of the motion, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. We have a motion tabled by Councillor Rosie, which has subsequently been seconded by Councillor Bremner, and the motion reads: Caithness Area Committee recognises that the Maygen project has positioned Caithness and Scotland as a world leader in the development and deployment of marine energy. The award-winning and pioneering project has already produced more tidal stream power than anywhere else in the world, creating highly skilled jobs both direct and throughout the supply chain. Caithness members confirm their full support for the development of the project to realise its full potential in terms of tidal energy, generating capacity, and the establishment of the MacLeod Data Centre, creating an integrated subsea terrestrial data centre and renewables project to provide Scotland with world-class digital infrastructure and the necessary tools to attract hyperscale availability zone requirements. Caithness Area Committee further calls on Highland Council to lobby support of UK Government for 100 megawatt minima for tidal energy in the next Contract for Difference auction round. That's the motion, Chair.
Thanks very much, Alex. Members, are you happy to approve that motion?
Yep.
Excellent, thank you very much. Could I please ask Jane, Julie and Morgan, who are taking the minutes, if you could please note in the minutes that that was unanimously adopted by the Caithness councillors, that would be great. Thanks very much, and Sean, look forward to working with you in future, and thank you very much for attending today.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors, for all your continued support. It's really appreciated. And as always, if you have questions or need anything else, then you have my details and always here to engage. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Bye now. Members, I think we'll return to item 6 now, because I think we have Jim Donaldson with us. So item 6, the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service report. And could I invite Jim, if everything's up and working now? Jim, would you like to give us a brief presentation, and then we'll move to questions?
Thank you, Chair. Apologies, everyone. I had signed into the meeting, but it was from an invite from mid-September, which is obviously the wrong one. So apologies for that. But I was here at 10 o'clock, I promise you. Have you all had time to look at the Caithness Committee performance report that was supplied? Yeah. Okay. Along with that, I've also provided a summary of the report, and just like to invite any of you to scrutinise, comment upon the report as normal. Or were you expecting a presentation, Chair? Sorry.
No, that's fine, Jim. You can assume that we've all read the report, yeah. And it was just if there was anything you wanted to add ahead of our discussion, you're welcome to do so. But if you want to move straight on to questions, it's absolutely fine.
Yes, I'm sure you've all had time to read it, and there's obviously a number of issues at the moment I'm sure you'd be keen to ask me questions on.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, so can I invite questions for Jim, please? Councillor Rees. Oh, Jim, could I just ask if you could mute your microphone, because we're getting a little bit of feedback. Perfect, thanks very much. Okay, Councillor Rees.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, Jim. It's a very quick question. Thank you for the report. It's a question that we probably right across Highland regularly ask fire officers. It's just really if you could give us a brief update on recruitment, which I know sometimes Wick and Thurs have been really pretty good. Some of the more outlying areas are more challenging. So just a few words on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Rees, certainly. Yes, as regards, as you said, Thurso and Wick, no major issues. I've got a few new faces locally in Wick, and Thurso is fairly well numbered at the moment. Main issue has really been Dunbeath. I've had, unfortunately, we had a bereavement in Dunbeath recently where one of our firefighters died fairly young of a heart attack just recently, which is quite sad. And we've always been looking to recruit there. I've had a few people recently locally. Unfortunately, one person had to get in, but they unfortunately didn't quite make the medical grade because it had an issue. Again, I've had a few people trying to get into John O'Groats, and again, there's been issues regarding levels of ability. However, we're trying very hard. I've recently had recruits for other stations of John O'Groats who's actually went over to Orkney to do their tests. So we're really pulling everything out of the bag here that we can to try and ensure that we can get people come and work with us. COVID has caused issues due to our health and wellbeing department having health and safety issues regarding carrying out medicals and doing things like step tests and peak flow lung tests, because obviously produces when you're heavy breathing and so forth. So there's been issues with that, but as a Highland area, we've actually addressed that, and we've asked our local health and wellbeing if they can up their ante regarding their game on that type of thing. So we're trying our best. You'll have noticed I'm sure you'll notice there's always advertisements in My Job Scotland for the area. We've just recently had an underspend, and the underspend's been used for banners for recruitment. So we're trying everything we can, looking at social media, looking at Twitter, and I'm not trying to put a question back to you, but certainly if any of the members of the committee feels they could assist me or come back to me after the meeting with any ideas or any assistance, I'd be very much welcomed.
Thank you very much, Jim. And at the risk of incurring the cheddar off, very briefly, I'm probably going to beat Councillor Donny Mackay to this one. Even in 20 seconds, is there any movement on refurbishment or replacement of Thurso Fire Station? And that's it for me. Thank you.
Well, I would say that Wick Station is further ahead. An architect who works for NHS had came and looked at how the station worked and how it flowed. I hate to say this, but like a lot of things, COVID-19 has put a number of things on the back burner. But certainly Wick is probably ahead of Thurso on that. And again, I'd like to think hopefully that the members would be able to start asking more questions at higher levels, and there'll be more answers, because it's certainly something I try and push and discuss and move any chance I get, and so does the managers here. But at the moment, we kind of feel our hands are tied due to the current circumstances.
Thanks, Jim. We'll note that point actually and have a further discussion about it. Councillor Rosie.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Jim. Jim, just very briefly, thank you for your report. And it strikes me the contribution that Scottish Fire and Rescue Service makes to the community itself. It's obviously firefighting and fire safety prevention is your main plank, but reading a report when your own involvement, there's mention of food and fuel poverty, and then I see my local station, the Thurso guys, doing some charitable events, and it's absolutely fantastic. So really, it was just to make that point, and thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing. Actually, Councillor Donny Mackay, was your hand up? Have you been able to join us, and can you hear us? Okay.
Yep, can you hear me?
Yeah, we've got you now, Donny.
Right. Hello, Jim. How are you this morning? I've been on about the Thurso station since many years now, and it seems to get pushed back for some unknown reason. Can you tell me why that is happening?
Thanks for your question, Councillor. Unfortunately, I'm in a, shall I say, a more lowly position to be pushed and asking these questions. However, as it was mentioned by the chair, the committee are going to discuss this afterwards, and I would welcome a meeting with yourselves or similar, so we can perhaps look at how we can progress this. The issue, I think, is that we are having to do it in partnership along with the Scottish Ambulance Service, which in turn is the NHS. So there has been a building identified. However, like I've said, everything appears to have been put on hold, I think just due to the current situation we're in with COVID-19. However, having said that, I would probably risk to say that if it wasn't the case, I think we would still perhaps be in a position of not being anywhere close to what you're hoping to achieve with this. So I welcome any movement by yourselves. I certainly will ensure that I take this off the table today, and I will put this to the local senior officer, LSO in Inverness, and I will ensure that he has sight of your concerns, and there is an action taken to ask the question again and see where we are at with this. That answers your question.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Okay, Councillor Mackay, I think you joined, that question was actually already asked by Councillor Rees. It was maybe just before you joined. So it's just to let you know that it has been raised and noted, and I would suggest with members' agreement that we note it on our action tracker as something to take forward. Members meet with Jim and discuss further how we can support him in getting that refurbishment off the ground. So we'll take that as an action. I'm not seeing any other hands up. Jim, I did want to ask you, thank you for the report, which is really clear and easy to read. I did have one question. I noted that there was an increase in the number of deliberate fires to 6 in 2020, quarters 1 and 2 combined. And I wondered if you could offer any comment on what the causes for that might be.
Thank you for your question, Chair. I'm just looking at it now. Actually, yeah, 6 on the year. Yeah, I can't quite put my I can't give you definitive answers, even though they're quite small numbers. But I would imagine that what's perhaps maybe skewed the figures slightly, that there was a couple of fires that were people burning rubbish, and that's probably skewed the figures slightly. And along with that, I think the other ones were perhaps campfire related or similar. I could come back to you and give you specifics, obviously within the realms of information you need to know, but I could perhaps come back to you and give you more specifics if required. But I'm sorry, I can't be more give you more information than that. But certainly, when we had the dry season, there was a couple of fires that had been set, and there was also, I believe, some campfires. So that hopefully is the reason. So
it was possibly then people not having their bins collected and things as normal, and then they're looking to get rid of waste. I don't think I need a detailed response. I just wondered if it was something we should be concerned about. It sounds as if it's an anomaly, and hopefully things will settle back down. Thank you for that. I agree. Don't have any other hands up. Does anybody else want to speak? No. Okay, in which case we have commented and scrutinised the area performance report. Are we happy to move on to the next agenda item, members?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks very much, and thank you, Jim. So if we could move on now, members, to item 8, which is the COVID response update. And if I could invite a presentation from Alan Tate firstly, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. As far as resilience updates, over the summer we've seen the community groups ease back on the support that they are providing compared to what was being done certainly during April, May and June. A lot of the groups have been working on a one-to-one basis to help people be more independent. You know, that looks different for each person. For some, it's just to leave the house and go for a walk even. For others, it was accompanying them on a shopping trip to build confidence. Sadly, a lot of that work on increasing independence is now stalled as restrictions are being put back in place and the virus numbers are increasing. There are also indications that people are getting a bit more anxious, especially those that were in isolation lockdown back earlier in the year. I've spoken over the last few months to all the organisations that were involved during the lockdown, and everyone is prepared to support their communities over the winter as best they can if things get bad again. So we are ready and are better prepared than we were in March with systems in place, but that does not mean it will be straightforward by any means. As a resilience group, we have been looking at increasing knowledge and contacts and looking at the issues that have been identified by the volunteers who've been in contact with vulnerable people all over the county during lockdown. Some of the issues have the potential to be resolved by better communication and some networking. Like some examples around needing a better pathway to access social care. So we're currently making contacts with NHS social care and we'll continue to do that. Organising access to food for groups via deliveries from CFINE, that's the Community Food Initiative North East. We've been checking on school meal provision from August for the kids that rely on that. We're looking at supporting village halls, or we're looking to support village halls to open so that support groups could restart. So those were issues that we could kind of resolve reasonably easily. The major issues that have been identified are around mental health and well-being, food and fuel poverty, and poor digital connectivity. We're in a very fortunate position that Caithness Voluntary Group, with great support from HIE, have secured more Aspiring Communities funding, and that will run for 21 months from July just past. So Julie Marker has been appointed as a part-time coordinator and Stephanie and Kay as full-time officers to work on projects to tackle inequalities in the county. So ideal timing to a certain extent. It won't surprise you that a lot of work that they've been doing today is centred around mental health and well-being. Julie has done a massive amount of research to ensure that we're working on initiatives that are up to date with current best practice and, equally important, can make a difference in our area. So action groups have been set up, and I'm delighted that there is input from all around the county, and that includes NHS, Police Scotland, Highland councillors, practitioners, community groups active in that area of work. As far as mental health and wellbeing, Carleen Rosie is leading a focus group of people with lived experience to sense check the work that's being done. So I say the action group has got, I feel like, great input of the right people that we need. Again, it won't surprise you, the initial finding from a survey that they carried out was that crisis support is lacking, there are long waiting lists, specialist treatment not available in Caithness, and a lack of information around what services are available. But the group are, certainly the mental health and wellbeing group, are making significant progress even in this short space of time. They're already looking at 2 initiatives around a listening project and an interactive resource hub, so kind of more information will follow in the next few months on that. So that's a kind of summary of what we've been doing since your last meeting. We are hoping for a quiet winter, but if not, we are as best prepared as we can be. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for that, Alan. I think you're all to be commended for not only the work that you did when we first went into lockdown and with COVID, but the way that yourselves and the Community Planning Partnership have kind of pivoted now and started looking at it more strategically. I think it's really important. I note that Councillor Brenner and Councillor Rosie both have your hands up. I was going to take Ian and Martin next and then invite questions purely because I think there'll be a lot of overlap on the subject. Are you both okay with me doing that? Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much, Alan. I'll invite Ian and or Martin or both to speak now, and then we'll come back to members' questions.
Thanks, Chair. And good morning, everybody. Yeah, just to kind of build on what Alan has already said, and just to kind of give our kind of independent kind of thumbs up to what CVG has been doing over the last 6-7 months. They've done an amazing amount of work. I think, as you said, Chair, to be able to stand up a group of responsible and accountable organisations in March at relatively short notice, very short notice, and to be able to deliver the range of vital services that they have done has been amazing. And yeah, they've had some support from the Scottish Government grant scheme that we helped administer, which has been fantastic. And some of that is still there to be used where there's been underspends. And we now have a follow-on grant program which we're involved in administering as well, which in theory is open until March next year. So that winter period becomes really, really important to everybody. And I think, as you've already said, Chair, what we've been looking at from a community planning partnership point of view, and actually were ironically already looking at pre-COVID, was how we draw out those thematic issues that Alan's already mentioned there: mental health provision, but also connectivity, digital connectivity, physical connectivity in terms of transport and fuel poverty. All those issues were already there. So what COVID has done is absolutely bring them to the surface. So we can't ignore that. I'm not saying we were ignoring it, but it's absolutely vital that we now take that forward and do something about it. And one of the interesting things I've been able to help take forward in the last month or so is the fact that the community planning structure in the Highlands was, I think, there was a kind of vacuum in the middle of it, if I could characterize it as that. So we had lots and lots of great work going on the ground, and actually some really good work going on at a strategic level in some of what they were calling thematic groups. The problem was that there wasn't enough connecting those two elements of the community planning partnership. So we've now been able to do that. That's now beginning to work. Early days for it yet, because frankly, most of the key community planning partners were part of the COVID response. So some of that, in terms of locality planning, for example, has largely not been taken forward during the kind of resilience phase of COVID. And we're now seeing that beginning to happen in the recovery phase. And that, for me, is what this winter looks like, is us taking all the issues that, and as Alan said, the fact that we've now got the second Aspiring Communities Fund support on the ground in Caithness, taking that forward, allowing those issues to be developed at ground level, and then us taking it up through the community planning partnership in the knowledge that it's actually going to get addressed. So for me, that's where we are. I'm really quite pleased that we're there, and I think I've already said to several of you in calls over the last month or so that really I think we've got the ability to reinvent community planning on the ground in a really, really productive way. And I think we're already seeing that. You know, if we've learned nothing from the last 6 or 7 months, it's that all this community-led effort that we've seen and has been fantastic needs to be the springboard for what we do in the next 6 months. Sorry, I'll leave it there because I'm keen that we get a discussion on it. And sorry, and the other thing I've completely failed to do is allow Martin to say a single word. So
I was just about to ask Martin if he had anything to add to that, Ian, so don't worry. Martin?
Yeah, thanks both. Thanks to you, Chair, and thanks, Ian. No, not a lot to add. I think just a thing to bear in mind as well, which I think is also quite interesting, is, as Alan and Ian has touched upon, is that the issues we are now seeing, we were always aware of them, but COVID has exacerbated it. But not only that, prior to COVID, we were talking about these issues out in the different plans that had to be drawn up into CPP, but we were never, it always felt as if we were a few steps away from the people who were actually suffering from these inequalities. Whereas now, due to the great work of CVG and the many community groups throughout Caithness, there's actually volunteers in every single community engaging with, I'm not saying all of them, but certainly a good chunk of the people that are having these experiences now. And that's also a completely new thing. Certainly for me, I've been working with CPP for nearly 3 years now, and we've never had that connection to the people who are actually suffering from the inequalities that CPP is there to address. So yeah, just wanted to put that in there, but quite keen for having a discussion around all this. Thank you.
It's a really important point, Martin. Thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Rosie and then Councillor Brimmer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Alan. Alan, my mind goes back to March and early days, and it was, I don't think it's too dramatic a statement to say those were frightening times, and one of the first things you spoke about was better networks as a result of that. And there's no doubt that you played a pivotal role in that as CVG, to experience and be involved in regular resilience meetings. And I think it's important to note how quickly the community became organised in those circumstances. And then they were able to move on and begin discussing many of the points that have been highlighted by both yourself, Martin and Ian. And I truly take a lot of confidence in how we can move forward now. We touched on mental health. It's a very topical issue in Caithness right now. And I know yesterday, Alan, I had the opportunity to participate in a meeting where Julie Marker gave us an update on the work that she's done around mental health, and it really is encouraging that we've identified what the issues are, and I think that's the ask from NHS Highland, and we'll be able to build on that now. And indeed, some of the discussions that we've had as councillors. So I think there's a huge amount to be to take encouragement from, and the most important thing, I think, to recognise each of the community groups that have been involved. They at no time did they wait or expect input from others. They welcomed the assistance they got, in various forms, but there was just a a determination to work together and minimise the effects of the pandemic and the other issues that we've identified. So, I think in times of adversity, it's a test of a community, and Caithness has passed that test of flying colours. So, I look forward to discussion we're going to have, and just thank each of you for your contributions, and look forward to working with you. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Rosie. Ian, your hand's up. Did you want to come back on that for us?
Yeah, it was just a point that I'd kind of glossed over when I was speaking there, and Councillor Rosie reminded me of it. That one of the outcomes, I think, from our conversations as chairs of the Community Planning Partnership has been that NHS Highland is coming out round, I think, each area to do a specific piece of work on mental health provision. Now, we did a piece of work, many people will recall, last year on this, supported by Highland Council. And I was talking to Councillor Mackay in Sutherland about this last week, and saying that if possible, we should probably have a Caithness and Sutherland approach to this, because the issues in terms of mental health provision are almost exactly the same in both Caithness and Sutherland. So I know that NHS Highland, for example, are going to go to the December meeting of the Sutherland Partnership. And I've said that I think it would be useful if we, as Caithness Community Planning Partnership, were part of that conversation too. So we're all having the conversation at the same time.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Ian. Councillor Bremner?
Thanks very much for that, and thanks very much, Alan. We're not strangers to each other over the past few months, and gotten to know an awful lot more about the other organisations that have been part of the resilience programme. I'm still chair of the Thurmster Community Development Association, so I should declare an interest, but I don't think it's going to cause me any inability to be able to speak to this matter. Nice to see Ian and also Martin. Gotten to know them over the past few months as well. I'm not going to repeat everything that Alan said, but one thing that Martin said there just now was absolutely smack on the button. That's exactly what it's been. It's been a finding out process as well as a delivering process. And Martin said that the Caithness Community Partnership had always been about a couple of paces behind those that were needing to be affected by the programme. Whereas with the resilience programme, it managed to connect. It managed to meet the need. It managed to be in contact. It managed to identify. But that was through a lot of groups who were actually right on the doorstep of these people. They were actually fundamentally integrated within the community. And that was the thing that the community partnership did not seem to be managing to establish with all the partners that it had at the table. And therefore, that's been the learning process. Not that, I mean, COVID has caused many families and members in their communities huge distress. We noticed that from the outset. And as Councillor Rosie said, it was a frightening time. People had no idea. Crikey, it looks as though governments had no idea. Never mind. And out of that, it has been a huge learning process for everybody. There are many considerations within groups and people within our community. They're all being played out on social media, and our communities are still being exposed to all of that. We thought that when we got through it, then that would be, it was a case of, well, it wasn't a case of patting ourselves on the back. We just knew that it was going to be the case that it would morph into something else, but we weren't quite sure what that something else would be. One of that has been that the community partnership and the resilience programme has managed to come together. Alan has been facilitating, so has Ian, and the funding has been essential. What Martin has been able to do in terms of facilitating that as well has been hugely welcomed by the communities. In fact, we could do with more of it. I know that because we certainly overspent with the TCDA, and I'm sure the Caithness voluntary group had the ability to be able to facilitate that for groups that would not normally have been in a position to be able to deliver the resilience programme. Alan knows about that and has been extremely helpful with his staff as well. So it's been a huge big come together for everybody, but it's morphing into something else. We are going into more lockdowns again. We have the tackling of the fact that we're going into winter. We have volunteer fatigue. We don't know what the next few months are going to hold for us. They are going to provide different challenges than what we were going into the summer months with lighter nights and people on furlough. They were able to help with a volunteer programme. Now we've got people more and more working from home. They're being engaged by their employers. They are no longer on furlough. There's all this kind of things that we've got to see how we can better manage that forward so that we can still effectively deliver any resilience programme in the future. I know that some of the points that we've been talking about have been those who we have identified that have particular needs that weren't actually on the radar or weren't being sufficiently provided for. That's exactly what Martin was saying there just now. It's really important that we catch them and we make sure that when the agencies are made aware of these people through the resilience programme and the volunteer organisations delivering it, and where they are identified, that there needs to be that continuation of the provision in some sort of form insofar as agencies identify and that support continuing, maybe, but not through the resilience provider responders and as a first response. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at, we need to make sure that we're looking at, and I know it's on the radar of many of the resilience groups, is the fact that we're going into a period of longer, darker nights, where fuel poverty might come to a greater height, where health issues in terms of winter flu bug, plus the COVID being more prevalent in local communities, and then causing a heightened fear factor within our groups of people and communities. They're not knowing when this is going to end, not knowing what it's going to mean for them, the loneliness that it's going to create because of the situation that they're going to find themselves back into, the isolation that creates, especially in rural communities, where some people don't see some people from one day to the next. If you can only go and visit one, if you can't go to each other's houses, there are going to be lots of lonely old people, and it's how we manage to engage all that. It's still going to be a challenge going forward. We're no way through the woods yet. It's just how we shape the delivery of the resilience programme going forward. I know that one of the groups that I'm leading have their meeting on Tuesday to see how that is going to shape forward. But we can't get away from the fact that we need to thank these groups massively. Alan, Ian and Martin have all been on record for doing that, not just at this meeting, but constantly through the summer. There is no way that we could ever measure the thanks and the humility some of us have been feeling being involved in such a programme. It's wonderful to know that we're part of a resilient community like Caithness, and it has been noted in other areas of the Highland. So well done, guys. Well done, all the folks that are part of the resilience group at the moment, and more strength to their elbow if that needs funding, coordination, better communication going forward. I'm sure that we've got the ability to do it. Well done, guys.
Thank you. Alan?
Yeah, well, I certainly would want to agree with everything Raymond said, especially about what we're facing this winter. I think Raymond's identified all the issues potentially that are more than likely to come towards us. So, as I say, we are as organised as we can be. And again, also like to put my thoughts on record. All the groups were so easy to work with. We're so willing to share information from March onwards. It was a pleasure to work with all the different groups involved. Possibly a point Carl made about how quickly we got moving was that we had groups that were near, I think every group was set up and were an established group, where a lot of areas had kind of what they call pop-up groups that kind of popped up in certain areas to do this work, where we had established groups with established networks already, and I think that helped a lot. The only other point I would make, again, I quite agree with what Martin was saying about we were 2 steps away from the people that were suffering the inequalities. I think we were also 2 steps away from the people that could help us solve the inequalities as well. Back in the old days of the locality plan meetings, it was difficult to get the buy-in from the agencies. Now, take my hat off to what Julie and her team are doing and all the groups. The action groups, they're packed with people that can make a difference, and that's something we didn't have before. So that fills me with that extra confidence as well, that we've got the right people, whether it's Highland councillors, whether it's NHS mental health practitioners, whether it's people from Caithness mental health groups, whether it's people that have had lived experience. We've got the right people that can help us make a difference. So that's positive as well. So yeah, thanks. That's all I would like to add.
Thanks very much for that, Alan. Councillor Mackay.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, thanks, men and gentlemen, for your presentation. I have no real fear about the volunteer fatigue which seems to be coming in now, because having worked with the rural communities in Caithness for the past 50 years, I've always regarded them as a big family, one big family working together. So yeah, and Alan, I like that phrase which you said, you're best prepared as we can be. Well, I've no doubt you are, because I've gone through crises like the foot and mouth of the farmers and the BAC, and it was real torturous. But yeah, no doubt at all, you have a great outlook there on going forward. Ian, I was at the launch of the CCPs way back in 2015, a few years ago, and the first thing we were told, Ian, was that it would take time to address the inequalities, and you have no money. You have no money. That was told to us all in Strathpeffer, if you were there or not, Ian. But however, there's one thing that is coming out. If there is one thing coming out of this dreaded COVID-19, it's the fact that now, Ian, you recognise this platform in going forward. And I'm delighted that you have that, identified the issues and concerns. And I hope it will consolidate and strengthen the CCP, as I said, going forward. So yeah, well done.
Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Ian?
Yeah, just to echo that, I think what Councillor Mackay said, I mean, I wasn't involved right back at the start of the CCP, but I think everybody recognised at that point that it wasn't a short-term ask. But the problem was, I don't think we were actually making fast enough progress towards whatever that solution was. And I think that's another thing that COVID has accelerated, is everybody's focus on what the solution is rather than just a rehash of what the problem is. The problems were already there, we already understood them. So it's the solution bit, I think, that's begun changing, and that's really, really important.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ian. I was also around in 2015 as a community councillor there then, and I do remember giving Roy Kirk, poor Roy, quite a hard time about how any of this could be achieved realistically. And I think that after what was quite a difficult start, as you said, 2020 has been absolutely transformational. And we as councillors now have been really quite proud to see Caithness being held up as an example of best practice across Highland and what can be achieved when we all pull together. So on that note, that was one of the reasons we wanted to invite you back to committee today. We have obviously a very, very vibrant and successful third sector, and the community planning partnership working really well alongside it. And certainly as chair, and I know all the members feel the same way, that we want to support you as best we can, and we want to make sure that Caithness committee works more closely with you in driving that forward, and we can work in partnership. I'd really welcome your views on how we could do that. One of the thoughts that I had is that we can have a standing item on this agenda. We only meet 4 times a year, but we'd be very happy to invite you back each time, and maybe each time we can have a different focus for discussion, whether that's mental health or drugs, and really just engage as we have been doing. We're all attending as we can the various sort of action group meetings and phone calls and things that are going on every fortnight. So welcome any views that other members or Alan, Martin and Ian have on that. So if I could go to Ian and then Councillor Mackay, I'll let you come back in. Thanks.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Chair. I think that's a fantastic way of us moving forward. Whether that's, I mean, I'm more than happy to be coming to each of these as a standing item to talk about where CPP is, community planning is, and you know the whole integration of what the resilience effort has been with CPP. I think we take that forward into the next 6-9 months. So that's our job over the next period. So yeah, absolutely happy to do that.
That's great, and I think it's worth noting that that's not in the format that you present to us and we ask you for information. It should be very practical and about how we're actually helping you and taking actions forward as well. So yep. We can have a further discussion about that. Councillor Mackay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to mention, thank you, Chair, for allowing me back in. Ian, yes, we did get an invitation to the December summit on mental health from Sutherland, and I think, well, I certainly will be joining. I'm sure my colleagues will as well. But we did get that invitation, Ian. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we did, and I've also discussed with Martin about the CPP Leeds meeting and how one of us can be there, whether that's myself or another volunteer from the councillors can be going along and keeping abreast of everything that's going on that way as well. Councillor Brenner mentioned earlier that we all have different areas that we focus on, and we try to be across as much as we can, but we all have different specialisms and stuff too. So between us, we'll be able to sort something out. We'll look forward to speaking to you some more about what that might look like. I don't have any other hands up. Do any other members want to speak? Okay. In that case, we'll just move on to item number 9 then. But thank you very much for your attendance this morning, guys. In fact, before we thank you.
Chair.
Before we move on to agenda item 9, can I propose a brief comfort break? Yeah. So if we come back, what, 12:05? That'd be okay. It gives us 10 minutes. Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Councillor Mackay, could you pop your microphone on mute for us, please?
Chair, I'll be leaving in 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay. Okay, members, we'll move on to item 9, and we have the Thurso Associated School Group overview. I was just about to introduce Alison Donald, but Alex, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I need to do the roll call, Chair, please.
Oh, sorry, sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Bremner?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Councillor Donny Mackay? Councillor Willie Mackay?
Sorry, Alec, I'm here at the moment.
Councillor Willie Mackay? Councillor Markey?
Present, Alex.
Councillor Rees?
Present, Alex.
Councillor Rosie?
Present, Alex.
Councillor Andrew Sinclair?
Present, yeah.
Councillor Nicola Sinclair?
Here.
It's Councillor Willie Mackay. I'll keep an eye for him, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Okay, so moving on to item 9, Alison, good afternoon, are you here?
Good afternoon, Nicola, yes.
Hi, Alison. We've all read the report, but if you wanted to give a brief overview or add anything to it, please feel free, and then we'll go to the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, members. I'd like to highlight some of the data you will have read in the Thurso ASG report and give a brief update on the expansion of the early years and the reopening of our schools and early year settings. In relation to staffing, I'm pleased to be able to report Pauline Pearson, as I'm sure you all know, has recently been successful in being appointed as head teacher to Crossroads Primary. This means all head teacher appointments within Caithness are now permanent. Early years, as you know, we're now committed to moving forward with the expansion of our early years in to 1140. In the Caithness area, the WIC ASG are going to be able to provide 1140 across all settings from November, so next month. And the schools in Thurso ASG still require estates work to be done in order to meet capacity. So Pennyland and Mount Pleasant, they require alterations to be made within the school buildings. And Miller and Ray Primary, they're awaiting new builds. The timeline for building works completion being August 2021. From the data, can I bring your attention to the positive destinations for Thurso High, where you will have seen there is an improving picture. The percentage of positive destinations from Thurso High are higher compared to Highland and Scotland percentages. The data also shows that more young people from Thurso High go on to further education rather than higher education. And this tends to be because of the geographical position of Thurso and young people worried about going a distance away from home, as well as the fact that the college is situated within Thurso and therefore easily accessed by the young people in the community. A number of these young people go to further education from school, and then when a little older, they'll go on to higher education. The data for pupil attendance, absence, exclusions for 1920 show Thurso High's percentage of attendance higher than the Highland and Scottish percentage, with exclusion rates much lower. You'll remember from last time Hannah came along with me and she talked about the fact that attendance and exclusion was something they were focusing on. Attendance has been a focus over the last year and a half, and with an attendance and family support PSA working closely with families to improve the attendance. A lot of work has been in place to improve behaviour management, ensuring consistency across the school, for example, in how staff are using sanctions. Hannah, the head teacher, feels this and the whole school nurture interventions show impact of a more settled environment, and any behaviours they have now are select behaviours. Move down here. The pupil exclusion rates in the Thurso ASG primary schools are mainly low and below Highland and Scottish data, other than those from Castletown and Hawkirk Primary. So you would have maybe thought, what were the issues there? In both schools, the figures reflect individual children who required social and emotional support, and the schools have worked closely with the pupils and families to support this. Investigation into the attendance rates that are below 94% show the figures reflect families taking holidays during term time, and also a couple of pupils who have ongoing medical conditions. During lockdown, at times there was a 90% engagement with young people from Thurso High. A strong support team was in place for those who were struggling to engage with guidance teachers, following up in a support, I'm reading this. Struggling to engage with, so pupils who were struggling to engage, guidance teachers would work in a supportive way with them, being highlighted. They would have been highlighted by the teachers of the pupils, and they would then give them a phone call. Problems included lack of Wi-Fi, family issues where too many people in the one home were requiring to access internet, or pupils who struggle in school anyway were also struggling at home. The school was keen to ensure learning was presented as simply as possible, and PSAs were trained to support one-to-one in Google Meets to help pupils go through their work. As a result, the pupils are generally coming back strong, and pupil focus groups are commenting on how they feel the return to school has gone as well as it could have. Staff are also able to pinpoint which young people need the extra support, and the extra government funding is going in to support this. They also have specific catch-up classes. In the primary schools in the area, we have a similar picture with schools fully open to pupils. The health and well-being of the staff and pupils has been a priority. Following Scottish Government guidelines, head teachers have completed risk assessments and communicated these to the staff, parents and pupils to ensure their schools can open safely. Individual virtual meetings have been taken place with head teachers to support this. For example, we've been recently working on how to provide hot meals in a safe and manageable way. This is very unique to each of the schools. We have a number of small schools in the area who have been able to open as one bubble, so there's no need for pupils to distance, with the main priorities being good hygiene protocols, cleaning, and staff keeping a 2-minute distance from pupils, or using face masks, screens when in close contact for a period of time. The recovery curriculum has focused on health and well-being, numeracy and literacy, and teachers over the last term have been able to access where the pupils are and what support is required to close any gaps. As a North leadership team, we meet regularly with the North head teachers in order to provide a space to communicate together, to support each other, to support colleagues, to have a consistent message of guidance, and to discuss any queries and to share good practice. That's just a brief overview. If you have any questions.
Thanks very much for that, Jason. Members, particularly Ward 2 members. Councillor Bremner.
So, sorry, I'm not a Ward 2 member, but I'm happy to comment on this report because for those of us who've seen these reports coming. We take an interest all over the county between Wick and Thurso, and the improvements that we've been seeing over the past years, Alison. We can't get away from this. These are good news stories, and it pains me to say that we don't see it reported enough in the press. Most of the times we actually have to go and chase the press to print it. But we're seeing this in both the high schools. I know that we can't fail to note that we get the Thurso ASG comes at some point, and then the WIC comes at another point. A couple of questions for you in my deliberation as well, Alison. Maybe you did bring the head teachers of the high schools previously, and it was good because we had the ability to be able to have a wee chat. Well, not a wee chat with them, but it gave them knowledge of the support from ourselves, and maybe was there a reason that was that going to be stopping, or was that a one-off, or are we likely to see them again? So maybe you could answer that for me. Could you also let me know about how affected we have been by COVID? It doesn't look as though, I think we're one of the fortunate counties in terms of how our schools have dealt with COVID, and given the fact that both our high schools have considerable numbers there, the mitigating factors in the education, and the ability to measure attainment going forward, Alison, because we've been using the normal ability to measure attainment. We weren't impacted on the last term so much by COVID, but so far we've been impacted all term just now, and that will impact, I'm sure, on, or we may expect that to impact on figures going forward. So the good news just now, I would like to hope that we can still present that as same good news after mitigating COVID. Can we also have a wee, is it possible, because I can't remember, if you bear with me for 2 seconds in the papers, I was looking to see in terms of the ASN support and ability to be able to, page 36, I think it is. How are we seeing that going forward? It's there's reference to the 5.7 full-time equivalent ASN teachers, 35.8 full-time equivalent PSA staff. Are we satisfied? I know that's going to be a difficult question for you. Are we satisfied that the ASN delivery programme in Caithness is meeting the requirements? And my last one was, in terms of the positive destinations, we've seen that consistently, year on year, improvements. But I think that we need to take cognizance of the whole table that you made representation of there just now, because there is a big difference between Caithness and Highland and Scotland per se. One of the things that we have definitely seen is that we have seen a drop in unemployed not seeking and unemployed seeking, to the point that we are, with both our schools, ahead of the pack by some way, and that's balanced by the fact that an awful lot more people, an awful lot more students seem to be leaving to go to direct employment. If you look at the figures for Thurso, for instance, we have gone from 22.9% to 33.3% to 31.86%, where the Highlands is at 33.88%, but Scotland as a whole is 22.92%. We've seen that consistently year on year, that they either go into higher education, further education, or direct employment, and that's just it's a fantastic story so far, and well may it continue. I'd like to make sure that our thanks is accorded, for all the work that everybody's putting into keeping these figures as high as they are, and the achievement of the Caithness ASG, both in Wick and in Thurso, is commendable. But we just need to keep our wits sharp about us. So a couple of questions there for you, but good news.
Okay, thank
you for that. Before Alison comes in to answer, I wanted to pick up a couple of them myself. You mentioned about the press coverage of positive destinations. Just to reassure you, we did actually get a paper report in the journal about the WIC positive destinations. So to be fair to our local press, we did get that one out there, and it's great to see it going out and receiving the recognition that it deserves. And Alison will be able to answer this anyway, but regarding teachers attending, my understanding is because of the school holidays, that's the only reason they're not here today, with it being the October holidays, but they should be coming back. I would also like to discuss the ESN part of the paper, so I'll come back to that later and hand over to Alison. Then I have Carl and Councillor Rosie and Councillor Rees waiting to come in. Thanks.
Chair, can I just ask, do we have Nikki Grant, the ECO for Education, in attendance at this meeting?
Yes, we do.
Nice to see Nikki.
Okay, and I'm sure Nikki will come in if she can answer any of the questions too. You're right, Nicola, that's we don't have a head teacher here today because it's the middle of the break. And yes, I completely agree. It's always great. It gives the colour and the picture to that data, to the numbers you get, and they can give a real good picture of how their school is going. What I would like to see is maybe some primary school head teachers coming along as well. And in Sutherland, Golspie head teacher has said he'll come along to the Sutherland committee in a couple of weeks' time. So no, that would normally be the case. ASN support. There has been no change this year in our staffing support, so that's a good thing. Roger, he arranges all the staffing and he's looked at the numbers, and we haven't dropped anywhere across Caithness or Sutherland actually. So that's a positive there, and maybe Nikki can add something to that. Affected by COVID, the measures of attainment, the impact on attainment, it's been a steep learning curve for everybody. It's been a steep learning curve for teachers, and Highland Council have been able to put in place some really positive support for IT, for teachers whose confidence in IT wasn't great, and that happened over the lockdown too. So, you know, there will be gaps, and I listened earlier on to the health and well-being issues that are obviously around there, and that, you know, if you're not in the right place to learn, then you're not going to learn anyway. So that really needs to be the number one priority. But that is why health and well-being is our the recovery curriculum just now. Once the children are in place, and I would say it's probably, when I've talked to head teachers over near the end of the last term, kids have been able to see where the kids are, and they can now pinpoint where the issues are. So because they actually had some really good communication with them, most of them anyway, and there are lessons to be learned, and that's where actually the positives, where we now have these forums where we speak to head teachers on a weekly or fortnightly basis and can share virtually, has been really positive for places like Caithness. So we share good practice, and at the moment I would say that's where we are just now, is teachers are now assessing where are the children, have there been any gaps, and how are we going to move forward. And I suppose that'll depend what happens as we move forward and what schools look like as we move forward in the next few months. I'm not sure if I missed something out there, Raymond. Was there anything else? No, I don't know if Nikki wanted to.
I forgot to say about the Gaelic unit. I always ask about the Gaelic unit. Pick it up later on from somebody else's points.
Okay.
Okay, I've got Councillor Rosie next.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, Alison. It's always good to see you. Most of the questions have been covered, so really I guess it's to thank you for your update, particularly 1140 hours and just what the timescales are. I know I have queries on that, and they're very much welcome. I think it's really relevant to the pandemic, you know, how people manage their lives, and, you know, it contributes to the economy. So good. The positive outcome update is fantastic, and again, let's just congratulate staff, parents and pupils, you know, most importantly of all. So fantastic news. I was glad to hear you mention that we're going to involve primary school teachers, and I'm delighted that they haven't attended the day. They're getting the ability to have a holiday, because goodness knows they needed it. I actually met one of the Thurso primary school heads on Saturday morning when I was out on my bike, and she was she was more than happy to engage me in a conversation, and it was really, really encouraging. And one of the points that was made then was the IT abilities of pupils, primary school pupils, during the pandemic, so the head teacher quite freely admitted that their abilities were maybe better in some cases than teachers, you know. So it showed, you know, it's really encouraging. But you know, so it's highlighting how we've managed the pandemic in the education sector and how well the kids have responded to that. So, Alison, I'm glad we've got Nikki Grant on board, and the key thing there is, as well as Nikki's involvement as ECO for Education, we're delighted to have Nikki as our ECO for Caithness, you know, which creates a direct link for between, you know, Highland Council generally and us as councillors. And I think when you mentioned health and well-being, we've already had discussions with Nikki about how we can address things for all ages, you know, so kids and adults. So that's really encouraging too. So thank you, Alison.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rees.
Thank you. Thank you, Alison, again for the report. I was thinking about this, and in a sense, probably like my colleagues, I sort of should declare a lot of informal interest in just simply having so many sort of friends and people we know in the high school, particularly. But that's a healthy thing. That's good. I want to just mention very briefly the school leaving stats. Normally, I treat statistics with a sort of generous dose of salt because we're often dealing with small numbers and it's very easy to read into them what you wish, either good news or bad news. But in this case, the trend is unmistakable. And I think it was Raymond that said, you know, this is really, really good news. And good news doesn't always sell, but it's quite clear the direction the school's moving in. And I think that a very large amount of credit is due to the senior management team and Mrs. Flavel for what they've said they would do. It is now, excuse me, being achieved. And that's just, you know, frankly, a big well done, 10 out of 10, 5 gold stars to them. Excuse me. I'd also like to mention the Chromebooks, which could I actually, Chair, could I get a glass of water and come back in? I suddenly got a tickle.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no problem. What I'll do then is I'll move on to Councillor Mackay. Alison, if that's okay with you, if you could just take a note, and I'll move on to Councillor Mackay and then come back to Councillor Rees and come back to you to answer those points, if that's okay. So, Councillor Willie Mackay.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to say to my colleagues, I do enjoy going to the Thurso High School Parent Council meetings, which is open to all our Wick and East Caithness councillors, because we have a large number of children attending Thurso High School from our ward. It's really, really good to be able to attend this. Now, Carl touched on what I was going to say, Alison, really. I'm delighted to see Nikki there as well. For me, I'm just so delighted how technology has played a major part in children so anxious and getting enthusiastic about going back to school. Absolutely unbelievable how they had video calls with their teachers, chats with their friends, interacting positively. It was a major, major breakthrough for them, because going to school, well, I remember in my days, I didn't want to go to school. But however, even walking past the school, driving past the school, walking around the school, it all helped to settle these children in getting back. And technology was a major, major boost there. So well done to Highland Council for interacting with them positively and getting them back into the classroom. Well done. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Mackay. Councillor Rees, are you okay to come back in now, or do you want me to come back to you later?
I hope I'm okay. Thank you. I think, well, I did hear Willie there. I was wanting to mention the Chromebooks, and hindsight, great thing, but my goodness, aren't we thankful the Chromebooks got installed and the ICT teams, unsung heroes. You know, the IT council in the past has had a lot of criticism, some of it justified, but the Chromebooks, according to teachers I've spoken to, have been our saviour. So we should really, you know, it's just been fantastic. I'm also aware from chatting to teachers, to be very blunt, they've put in a lot of extra hours with just connecting with the students, with the young people, especially to help the ones that maybe weren't always getting in touch quite as much as they should have done. And that's been a big sacrifice by the teachers that hasn't really been perhaps publicised much. 2 little final points. When school went back, great idea at the high school. I don't know whose it was. They had bunting up to welcome the young people back. A small thing, but I see the chair smiling and I was smiling too. It's just a little thing, but what a nice touch. And finally, just so we don't forget, my question I finally got to Alison or Nikki is just really if you could give us just a minute or two just on sort of, we're obviously on red alert regarding increases in mental health concerns. I'd be interested just to get your professional thoughts on what you're seeing so far. And I've no idea what you're going to say, but that's my question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Alison, if you could respond to that, and I also have Nikki Grant looking to come in on it as well.
Yep. I think, Matthew, when you were talking about statistics and data, and you're quite right, especially in smaller schools, you can get, numbers skewed. But where it is really positive is when, and I think this is what's happened in Thurso or even Wick as well, where we've seen positive trends, is where data is used to see where do we need to focus, and then a really good plan is in place to focus it and strategies put in place. And to me, when I speak to Hannah, that's what I see is happening there. So that's where it can be very positive. And I certainly will pass on her thanks to her. The ICT as well, Chromebooks has been brilliant, and it's amazing when sometimes you just put in that position where it's like everybody was just kind of thrown into it in March, April, and teachers, as much as kids, really they're confident, some of them needed to be lifted, and that's where our ICT support, curriculum support team have been fantastic and have been able to do that. And as you say, the Chromebooks are playing a huge part, and we've really upskilled in a very short period of time. I'll let Nikki come. Nikki, did you have, especially on the health and wellbeing side?
Thanks, Alison, and thank you, members, for your questions. It's lovely to come along today and to hear the positives around education, because it has been a bit of a roller coaster for us in terms of getting our schools back. And the points that you've highlighted today are the points that we're considering kind of on a weekly basis with our head teachers. We'll go back to the attainment question, I think, from Councillor Bremner, and one of the questions that you posed was around, was I worried about the attainment across the Highlands? As you know, rescue attainment has risen over the last year, and it's been the best over the last sort of 5 years. So I'm really confident in terms of how we move forward with that. Rescue have published guidelines. As you're aware, there'll be no National 5 exams for some of our young people, and higher and advanced higher qualifications and final exams will go ahead in May. Do I think our young people will be in the best place to achieve the best grades that they can? Yes. And the reason, as you pointed out today, that they will be able to do that is around the ICT provision that we were able to provide on a fairly quick basis, in terms of when we had gone into lockdown. You also, if you remember, as members, made the commitment to changing our curriculum forward. So our young people, in effect, started their courses much earlier than what they would have had we not gone into lockdown. So I am confident that we'll be able to raise more attainment levels, and we'll continue in the vein that we have over the last year. One of the positives, Councillor Race, in terms of having conversations with head teachers, certainly in February time, was that we went out to each of our head teachers across our secondaries, had very robust discussions around target setting. And what I will say to you is the head teacher at Thurso, it was probably the best discussion that I've had with a head teacher around target setting, around attainment, around understanding each of our young people and understanding what that positive destination was for the young people within the community. And that's something I'd like to highlight today. I think each of our head teachers have a real understanding of the career aspirations of our young people, and hence the reason why both Wick and Caithness have gone on to positive destinations. But what I will say to you today is it's not just about that first destination. It has to be potentially about that second destination too. So we can't just accept the first destination. We need to think about longer term what that's going to look like for our young people. With regards to ESN allocations and resources, the education officers will be updating members next week, so there'll be spreadsheets coming out next week, and I'm sure your area managers will be discussing that with you just in terms of the allocation of the resources. As you know, we have a number of workshops with our members just prior to the Education Committee, and part of that workshop will be around our ESN allocation. In February, we committed to potentially looking at different models of delivery. We've gone out to various local authorities, and I think there's potentially maybe 4 models that we're looking to deliver in terms of ESN. But it has to be down to the needs of the young person. It's got to be down to the resource that we have, and we've got to think about best practice and how we can move that forward. Just think Councillor Bremner eating and laughing in the corner there, he's put me off, sorry. In terms of the mental wellbeing, Councillor Rees, yes, I think we have seen a significant rise in terms of wellbeing and mental wellbeing of our young people, and that's the reason why what we're looking to do for all of our third-year young people is to give them a qualification in mental health and wellbeing. So it's something that we would like to focus on, and rather than maybe having professionals coming in, we're really looking at our young people as peers to support our young people within that. So just a couple of things just to update you on. And I'm conscious that I've probably spoken over time there just now, but I'm happy to pick up anything offline.
Sorry, Nikki, sorry to interrupt, Chair. Could you just repeat the last bit you said? I couldn't, it was a bit about a qualification for third years or something. The line wasn't very clear. Sorry, thank you.
No problem. What we're looking to do, Councillor Rees, is there's an SQE Mental Health and Wellbeing Award, and we're looking to put that into each of our secondary schools. And we're going to target our third-year young people, because there's a specific unit within it that would support them in terms of potentially supporting, their peers around mental health and wellbeing, which I think, longer term is going to be the best value for our young people. And quite often, young people have that conversation with their peers and have it with maybe outside organisations. So I think that's really exciting.
Thanks very much, Nikki, and just wanted to repeat that it's really great to have you with us today, and especially now that you're going to be our Caithness Eco. So thanks very much for attending, and that's really useful. I have a question relating to the paper. Councillor Bremner, you've already spoken. Can you keep it very brief and well behaved?
I promise I'll be very, very brief, and I promise I'll be really well behaved and not laugh. Just one little question, and it is surrounding Gaelic medium in Thursday. Can we have a little bit of confidence in saying that we have got ourselves sorted out with the future for the resourcing of the Gaelic medium unit going forward? That is as simple as that. And just to say to Nikki, yes, I had a little bit of a giggle there just now, because behind the scenes, and I'm quite happy to say this as well, because there's such good news coming out of the Caithness Committee this morning, that it's really important that we get all this good news out there, because sometimes it just doesn't get there, and some of us are making sure that happens behind the scenes here, and we're quite excited about it. So you should see it as a really good positive. If you're going to be the eco for Caithness, you should take a lot of positives from this thing. And crikey, this lot have got it all sorted. I don't need to do anything. Not quite the case.
No, it's really good to hear good news, and just to say that we're fully committed to GME. As you know, Lena Walker was she's kind of been appointed as an interim to support us in terms of how she moves that forwards, and she'll be in touch with you to discuss how we plan to take that forward. But no, I'm excited to be here, as is Alison. And when I come up on the 3rd and 4th, potentially we can maybe get some press headlines around the positive destinations for young people, because I think it's important to celebrate our young people. So thank you for inviting me here.
Thanks very much, Nikki. I would just like to make one observation or suggestion off the back of the reports, and I'd be interested to hear members' views on this. Each time we have the reports on the ESG's performance, we have a breakdown of staffing levels, and also, I can't remember if it's in every report, but certainly in this one we have a note that, as Councillor Bremner raised, about ASN. So we know that we have 99 pupils at levels 3 and 4. We have 5.7 additional ESN FTE and 35.8 PSA. It's just, for myself as chair, a note of caution. I think it's hard for us to see that in context, because we don't know what the exact need is against, we have those pupils at level 3 and 4, they're all individuals, they'll all have very different, although they are at different levels, they will all have different personal requirements. There's also levels 1 and 2, which I know demand more teacher attention in the classroom. So it was to ask the question about how the data is presented, whether we can have a better sense of, first of all, in general staffing terms, you know, if we're being told how many teachers we have at the schools, does that mean that's a full complement, or how many vacancies are there that are unfilled, and particularly long-term unfilled? And also with ESN, getting some understanding if that is the full resource or if there are gaps there. I noticed that a lot of budget is being carried forward. So there was 2 actions from that. The first was to inquire about the data that were being presented and having a bit more context around that. And the second was more of a question about, we've had a report on WIC ESG and a report on Thurso ESG, and we'll have these meetings, which is great. Could we look at a future meeting at having some report specific to ESN, which cuts across both ESGs? So having perhaps Roger Bamfield or an officer dealing with that, and teachers to discuss it with us as well, because I think it's one that's really important. It has had a lot of change and a lot of attention recently, and I certainly would like to be more up to speed with how that looks in terms of our local picture. So interested to hear any thoughts on that. If you wouldn't mind coming back on that, and then Councillor Rosie would like to come back in as well.
Can I say something there? I think that's a great idea with the ESN. In Caithness, as you said earlier on, we have WIC ESG twice a year and Thurso ESG twice a year, whereas in Sutherland there's one because there's 4 ESGs, if you like. So there's plenty of room, I would say, to have once a year if that's something that you want to do. There's plenty of room to have one that is focused on ESG for the 2. So I would say that was positive. The staff it's also the levels 1 and 2 tend to be differentiated within the classroom, and levels 3 and 4 maybe need other resources. But as you say, it's understanding whether that's what is the need. Somebody actually with a level 4 may not need a human resource attached to them. Each school is aware of that, and Roger works with each school to try and make sure that the needs are met. I'm sorry, I can't tell you exactly the numbers that if we're looking for any staff at the moment, but I can ask Roger to update us on that.
I think, to be honest with you, Councillor Sinclair, I think we need to look at the way that we report as a whole, and I think we need to take feedback from members around that, because I don't think it's fit for purpose now, so we need to revisit that and see what's best for you in terms of our reporting format. It's something that officers have been discussing. This is as an action note, rather than Roger coming to the meeting, I'd rather the area manager, in your case, it would be you that would come to the meeting to discuss how things can move forward, because I think it's important you do that, because you'll have the overview for the area. But I think it's a really good point, Councillor Sinclair, and it means also that you can get into the nitty-gritty of what's happening within schools and can support schools moving forwards. As I said, the ESN workshop will look at the levels 1 to 4. What does it look like? What does it mean for your young person? What does it mean for your school? It's important to go back and revisit that. So, really good point.
Thanks, Nikki. I'm actually really heartened to hear you say that we need to revisit the reporting structure, because I think it is something that we discuss at pretty much every meeting of Caithness Area Committee, and we understand that there's particular protocols to be followed. So it's good if we can look at that root and branch, and I would welcome it. And if Alex could note that down as an action for us to discuss ESN and how best to take that forward, that would be great. Councillor Rosie.
Thanks, Chair, and I will be brief. Just glad you raised those points. They're really important, and really encouraging to hear responses from both Alison and Nikki. I guess the other 2 things directly to Nikki. Nikki, I've got to congratulate you on making Councillor Bremner blush. I don't think I've seen it too often in my time as a councillor, so you did very well. Seriously, just going on, that's a fantastic initiative with the SVQ for mental health and well-being. I just wonder, and this relates to you being our Caithness Eco, I think there'll be some value in maybe attending one of our Caithness resilience meetings, because some of the discussion we've had, there's definitely a desire for people to have maybe a wee bit more training. I don't know whether it's appropriate in the SVQ, but if it could just stimulate that conversation, I think it'd be really useful. So it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on that, Nikki. Thanks.
No, Councillor Rosie, I think it's a really good idea, and I think a qualification, whether it's in school or whether it's for our adult population, is always important, you know, kind of moving forwards. I spoke to the Chief Executive this morning, so she's really keen to come along to, she's either going to come to the 2-day visit with myself to the area, or what she'd like to do is potentially come to the next meeting along with the Chief Exec from NHS Highlands. What they'd like to do is to, you know, to listen to the various conversations that you've had, but also to maybe give some solutions in terms of how to move things forwards for mental health. I think that's really exciting, and she wanted me to pass that on today around that. So, positive.
Thanks, Nikki. And you're all being really badly behaved today because Matthew Rees would like to come back in as well. So please be brief, Matthew.
Yeah, on the naughty step again, ma'am. Sorry about that. Nikki, I agree with what Carl said. I agree also, Chair, with what you're saying about mental health and the report structure. My colleagues, Nikki, will know that I'm usually urging a reduction in length and complexity of documents, my motive being to reduce the workload on officers. But on this one with mental health, it has my full backing as well. I think that there probably is other stuff that is, frankly, less important for us. And also following on from Carl's invitation, it would be fantastic sometime if you can get the time. I think the Parent Council, particularly at Thurso High School, it would be very, very informative for them to be able to fire some questions at you to understand about the sort of more of the strategic stuff that you've alluded to just now. And when times get back to normal, you may have done this already, but just to get a look around the school, which is obviously one of the oldest buildings, it has been brilliantly maintained over 6 decades by the council, and it really is actually in good condition. But there are a few small, not very expensive improvements that could be done that would go a long way. 1 or 2 of those have been done already. I think, and I'll make no bones about it, there are schools that are much younger than Thurso that are basically needing replaced. Considering the climate and the wind that blasts around that school, it has been really well looked after, and it would be, if you haven't been around, it would be good to see it. Thank you. I hope I've been brief, Chair.
Very much, Councillor Rees. Okay, so members, you're invited to scrutinise and note the content of the report. Can I ask if you're content to note the report, please?
Agreed.
Okay, thanks very much. And can we move on now? Apologies, I've got 100 messages popping up on my screen distracting me. Can we move on to item 10, Caithness Housing Revenue Account Capital Programme, please? And we have read the report, but we'll invite comments on it to start.
Apologies, Chair. I'm not sure if you're wanting me to give a brief introduction. I didn't quite catch what you said there.
Yes, Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a quick overview or anything you want to add from the report, please.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry about that. Thanks, members. Yeah, the report's in front of you. I think there's a couple of comments I'd like to make. I think there's been really strong and robust debate with members and the local team, and I'd like to thank everybody for their assistance with putting together the Caithness programme for 21-22. In particular, I'd like to thank the Principal Housing Officer for her support in terms of identifying the key priorities within the report, and I guess it's obvious from looking at Appendix 1 in the report that the key priority really is heating stroke energy efficiency measures. And a note from earlier on in the discussion in the committee that there has been reference to fuel poverty already today, and I guess that's been a flavour of the debate with members in respect of the capital programme. And secondly, just one thing to note, members will probably appreciate a slight change in wording of the environmental improvement section of the budget. The comments in respect of that are now that we would be looking for members to identify key capital projects as opposed to specifically environmental projects. And also members will note that that proportion of the budget has increased from the standard 5% to 10%. And I look forward to the quite considerable debate that we'll have over the coming months as to how we would prioritise that. So welcome any comments and questions, Chair. Thank you.
Jonathan, thank you very much, and on behalf of the committee, just thank you for the time that you've put in, yourself and Margaret, in terms of discussing this report and the contributions that we've made and incorporating them into the paper. It's very much appreciated, and it's good. I think it's in really good shape. Councillor Bremner.
Well, this will be no surprise to either Jonathan Henderson or Margaret Ross, who's the Principal Housing Officer, and she's also in attendance here just now, that I'm on this like a rat up a drain pipe. I'm not going to talk about specifics of the report. All the members here are used to the content of housing reports coming to the Caithness committee. However, the one thing that I'm going to say is that it's nice to see this report has definitely changed in its content, is definitely changed in its approach, and that has been a wholly collaborative project, or a wholly collaborative effort by everybody that's in the housing team in Caithness. And it's not the first time that we've taken a hat off to Margaret and her whole team, and also through the understanding that we've built with the housing team up here, we have been far better educated to be able to go to people like yourself, Jonathan, from the first days that I walked into your office. Oh, excuse me, I'm just about to put somebody on hold. From the first time I walked into your office and found out that we had a lot more money to spend on the environmental budget than we'd ever dreamed of. But in the past 3 years that we've spent a lot of that money and wondered what more material benefit can we bring to the environment of the tenants, when actually we could do something that's far more substantial in terms of the matters that affect them. And one of those has been, without a shadow of a doubt, fuel poverty and heating systems, whether it's to do with the heating systems that we consider putting into areas of housing, or whether it's individual concerns over years where different heating concerns are highlighted on a singular basis. But now what we've done is, through what we've suggested here just now, and I wholly endorse, and we know that through our monthly housing meetings which support this, we've had these discussions on an ongoing basis. It's not just once a quarter that we're attending to this. So it's all good news. It's more reflective of localism. It's more reflective of how we think that we can better benefit tenants out there. That's also come through the discussions with the tenant forum and also with the interested tenants groups that some of us attend. But to consult our tenants and just say, what is it you want us to do? Where do you want us to spend this money? That's going to be particularly unique for Caithness. And I think that we're kind of leading in that kind of manner, in that kind of way. I'd also like to put it on record as well that it was good to be able to speak to and have the Eco for Housing, yourself involved, the chair of the Housing and Property Committee, the local area manager, Margaret, the Principal Housing Officer, all together discussing these. So we've actually got it from the people who are delivering the service on the ground right to the top, and it's being facilitated from a Caithness perspective. We understand that there's lots of different shouts on housing right across the Highlands, but they're all different. Different things prevail in different areas. Different challenges prevail in different areas, and this paper shows us that we're actually looking at it from a local perspective, and I think that it can't be anything but good. It's a wholly different way that we're viewing this just now. It's refreshing, and I'm very excited about it. And that needs to be put on record, and we're better to do that than at the Caithness Committee. Good luck to everybody on this, and the same with the members, because those of us who are involved in this, we're very excited about it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we can achieve. Thanks very much.
We're excited about it, and thank you for your work on it, Councillor Bremner. Do any other members want to speak on this item? Councillor Rosie?
Yeah, just briefly, Chair, and I think it's important that we recognise just what work has gone on here. I was always an advocate of us developing closer relationships with council officers, and I think we've got to recognise Councillor Bremner's efforts in doing it in this particular case. I haven't been involved in this as much as I would like to be, but you know, I think when you consider, and I always take pleasure in watching the position that we reached. I think we've got every reason to be proud of it, and I think Raymond's right. It should be something that should be replicated across Highland Council if we're going to make Highland Council more efficient. So, and I hope I'm not going off piste here. I recently participated in a presentation by Belcas Limited. Jonathan, I don't know, they're based in Invergordon, and essentially it's a renewable energy firm using wood pellets, and they produce energy. Maybe you can nod your head or shake if you're not too familiar. But the point I want to make is, and I don't know whether you participated earlier on, Jonathan, but I think we've got some fantastic expertise in the Highlands on all matters energy related. I would love to see a situation where, as a Highland Council, we can get all of these minds in the same room. So I've got an opportunity to prompt that next week at full council, and I will do it. I think getting guys like yourself, Sean Parsons, Tim Cornelius, and there's a range of other people. So I think we could do so much more in the Highlands to address the challenges and crucially tap in the opportunities we've got. So really, I'll leave it there, Jonathan, but thanks for your report as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Rosie. Jonathan, would you like to pick up any of those points?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of things. I think, yeah, Councillor Bremner, we've come a long way from those initial discussions. I think when we reflect back, and I think it is important to look back in order to see the progress that we've made. So I think when first and post, I think we were looking at things probably more Highland wide, and I'm really pleased to see across Highland now the way in which the different programmes have developed in tackling the key priorities as the local areas identify, and that's what I like the fact that you look at this programme and you recognise it as the discussion that we've debated quite considerably in respect to Caithness. And I think you're right, the more kind of innovative discussions that we've had, and touching on Councillor Rosie saying there as well, I think probably at the moment are unique to Caithness, and I would like to see similar discussions, and they are emerging across Highland as we go. Councillor Rosie, in respect of new technology, we're always looking at ways in which we can deliver better outcomes for people, and I think that renewables are something which we've done a lot of over the course of time, and I think we do need just about how we can perhaps be a bit more innovative in terms of the options that we're able to present people.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Do any other members wish to speak, or can I move to the recommendations? Not seeing any. Councillor Bremner. Really briefly, I'm going to give you 30 seconds.
No bother. Where is the Principal Housing Officer and about this all?
Mrs. Ross, would you like to contribute on this item? I assume you'd have put your hand up if you did, but you're very welcome to comment.
Good afternoon, members.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for your kind words, and you too, Councillor Bremner. It's not a chore to be involved in looking at that capital programme. I don't know an awful lot about the capital programme, but I know what our Caithness tenants need and want. And if we can go any way to delivering that and making life easier, refuel poverty, then I'll play every part that I can. It's been refreshing. It's been interesting. We've had some, really, really, really good discussions, and I'm just delighted the way it's all going. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just to record our thanks to Margaret and Jonathan for your hard work. And I think we're moving in a really positive direction. So members, if we could move to the recommendations of the report, the committee is invited to 1. Note the allocation of resources to Caithness area as set out in section 5.7. 2. Note the guideline investment priorities as set out in sections 5.2 and 5.3. 3. Agree the proposed 1-year HRA capital programme for Caithness 2021 to 22 as set out in Appendix 1. 4. Note the position relating to the current year HRA capital programme. And 5. Note that updates on the Housing Revenue Account capital programme will continue to be provided through ward briefings and at future local committees as requested by local members, in addition to reporting to Housing and Property Committee. Is everybody happy to note those recommendations?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to item 11, we have the Housing Performance Report for April 2020 to June 2020. We're invited to scrutinise the information provided on housing performance, and I'd invite Mrs. Ross to speak to this report.
Lovely, thank you, Chair. The report doesn't have a massive amount of intense detail in it, but it's how we always present it. But I know that our housing meetings are backing up this report, and I'm delighted about that. We'll start with repairs. Average length of time taken to complete emergency repairs, which you'll understand because they're emergency, are calculated in hours. And on the Thurso side of the county, there's been a reduction in response times for an emergency, but for some reason there's an increase in the Wick side. I haven't actually been given an explanation of why that is, to be honest. However, you should note that even during the height of the pandemic, those figures were well within the 14-hour target, and emergency repairs, it goes without saying, are always a priority for the service. Non-emergency repairs, of course, which take longer, are measured in days, and they continue to below the target of 8 days. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic did, however, result in a reduction of completed non-emergency repairs. So throughout lockdown, we were only really doing emergency repairs and some external work. Management, average relet times, well, in Caithness, they continue to be affected by these hard to let properties, and there's no getting away from that. And obviously throughout Q1 we only completed 24, whereas last year 61, so big difference. We weren't allocating. We were addressing high housing need and still housing homeless, but we, generally speaking, we weren't allocating. Rent arrears. I know I've spoken extensively to you about the challenge of rent arrears. The pandemic has significantly restricted our ability to escalate action to bring back down these rent arrears. However, and it'll be no surprise to see that they were up in Q1. We've had a quick look at Q2 this morning, and they're actually down. So I realise I'm reporting in Q1, but the Rent Arrears Working Group was set up. We're trying every initiative we can. The DWP have started paying us when they take the money from their clients. We've got what's called daily payments now, and it is starting to impact. But maybe if there's time at the end, I've got some more detail on the rent arrears for you. Homelessness decreased slightly in Q1. We're up to 20 furnished units now. And, well, the number of presentations still remains manageable, I would say. And that really concludes it, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Margaret. I'd noted a couple of points from the report, and actually the same things that you'd highlighted. The first was congratulations to the team for the repair response times, which, considering that we were in the grip of COVID, are really very impressive. And I think that's a credit to all your hard work and dedication.
We'll pass that on.
Thank you. Also, yeah, just the rent arrears, just absolutely eye-watering and really quite difficult to see, no doubt a result of COVID, and we know that everybody's doing their best efforts to address those. The only other point I wanted to make was in Appendix 2. I was looking through the table, it's on page 54, and I think that the information provided is out of date because it refers to things coming up in spring 2020, which is obviously past. So it's just to flag that up. I imagine that's due to COVID and everything that's happened, but for future committees, if we could just get those that data updated so that we're looking at the most up-to-date information possible. That would be great. But otherwise, just thank you for all your hard work, and it's a really good, helpful report as always. Councillor Bremner. You're still on mute, Councillor.
As I say, everybody likes to keep me there as long as possible. Yes, I'm not going to repeat some of the stuff that you said there just now, Nicola. Chair. Oh, I do beg your pardon. Dropping the title. It's been challenging times for all the housing teams in council. It's been challenging, and it's been challenging for every service deliverer within council through COVID, understanding how we can adapt to be able to still deliver the service, and the expectations of the public still expecting us to deliver the service. So I would applaud the housing service in Caithness for being able to deal with what they've been dealing. Can also say, Margaret, that you have had it's not reported in this report, but there's a number of individual responses that we've come to you and your team with over the months through COVID that have been dealt with, and they've been dealt with, and sometimes some of them have been really challenging, and some of them have been challenging because of COVID. Where folks have been dealing with the effects of COVID in trying to sort things out within housing, and the housing team. It's been a struggle sometimes getting to the end of it, but it has been achieved, and we can only thank you and your team for that. In terms of rent arrears, that situation is nationally recognised. It's not something that's unique to Caithness, and therefore it's not reflective really of a Caithness issue. It's reflective of a Highland-wide issue and reflective of a national issue as well. And again, busting the myth of homelessness. Sometimes we don't understand, and our communities don't understand that there is an obligation. We have been told about this since I first got elected, and many others. There is an obligation for the council. There is a statutory duty. That's the words to house homeless people who present, and we have done that. In Caithness, there is not an issue. There are homeless units all over the county. They are there by necessity. And with all the people that we have to deal with, for all the reasons that we make homeless, people find themselves without a home. It's not people on the streets per se. These are people who have found, there have been challenges in various forms of their life, and the council is obligated. It has a statutory duty to put to find them a home. And I think that sometimes we still find it difficult to bust that myth out in our communities. So I think it's worth reiterating that up here in Caithness, we are still managing to comply with that statutory duty, where others in other areas still think that it is a difficulty, that people are on the streets because we have not given them a house. It's not the case.
Thank you.
Okay, any other members want to speak to this? No. Margaret, is there anything you'd like to add, or are you happy to move on?
Oh, happy to move on, Chair, thank you.
Okay, members were invited to scrutinise the information provided on housing performance in April 2020 to June 2020. So we've done that, and we'll move on to item 12, which is the WIC Common Good Fund. Margaret, thank you very much. So the WIC Common Good Fund, we have a circulated report, and apologies, I'm not 100% sure who we have speaking to it today.
You've got me, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hiya.
Thank you. I wasn't sure if it was yourself or Paul. If you'd like to, we've read the report, but again, if you just want to go ahead and do a quick summary for us and highlight anything that you think we need to pay particular attention to.
Certainly. Well, good afternoon, as it is now. Yes, the report on WIC Common Good Fund. This follows investigations that I've been doing and discussing with Paul as well, who's our legal manager in conveyancing and commercial, regarding the possibility of Common Good Fund in a number of the boroughs that we'd not previously identified as having Common Good Fund. All of the boroughs in Scotland would at some point in their history have had common good property, although it is widely known that not all of the boroughs across Scotland still have it for various reasons historically. When we came under quite a bit of pressure following and in the run-up to the Community Empowerment Act to publish our common good registers, we very much went with the properties that we knew were already in existence across the boroughs that historically we'd considered to hold common good property. And then with the intention that we would start to look at the other boroughs where there had to be something, even if it wasn't an awful lot of it, there would probably be something somewhere. And that was very much the intention following publication of the registers. That took a little longer to publish than we anticipated for various reasons and a number of inquiries, but they were finally all published on the existing funds in February of this year, and they're all available to have a look at on the council website. It must be commented, and it's acknowledged, that historically and for a significant period of time, Wick, both members and the community, have firmly been of the view that there was common good land within the borough. It was a tricky one to identify, looking at historic documents, because the original reports that were done into the boroughs indicated that Wick hadn't been given any property with the charter as such. But then obviously we have case law that comes along that then categorises property and how you identify common good property. So we've now adopted although there's no formal definition of common good property, we've very much adopted what is a case law definition, which is that any property owned by a borough, if not held under statutory powers and not acquired and held under a special trust, is common good property. That's having significant implications, I must say, across the whole of the Highland estate as we do more and more title investigations, and we're identifying property that perhaps has come via ownership through the regional council now to Highland Council that originally would have been common good property. But I think as far as Wick is concerned, at least we've been able to approach it with a fairly fresh slate with that in mind very much as a definition. The thing that really kicked everything off and brought it into focus was the title investigation into Riverside Park. And it was very much a case of as simple as, and this is how easy it is for common good property to suddenly be identified, someone reading out the manner in which that property was owned, and it's simply having all of the markers to be common good, and a case of saying, let me have a look at that deed, and this is common good property. So that sparked then how we had to look at other properties within Wick. It's often quite difficult to work out what may or may not be considered as common good. Clearly anything like a lot of the municipal buildings, a lot of parklands, all of those are fairly obvious for identifying and possibilities for common good. But there's always little bits and pieces of land tucked away around corners and things like that that also need to be looked at. There's also a whole wider investigation that hasn't yet taken place, like harbours and coastlines and so forth, because there you've got the Crown involved and it's not always immediately apparent. But we started to focus on the land in Wick. We started to look at things like the map room and what was held very much as community property. We started to look at old maps. They're an absolute mine of useful information. And they often identify things like drying greens and bleaching greens and so forth. And slowly we started to evolve a list with the various deeds that we could access, and also discussing with the immediate local members, looking online and so forth. We've now produced a list of property that we consider is likely to be common good property in Wick. What we have to do, that's what's contained in Appendix 1 to the report. What we then have to do is consult on that. It's very likely that there's property that members of the community may wish us to investigate, and that's part of the purpose of consultation. Part of the purpose of the consultation is to say, this is what we think is common good. If they agree, they don't have to make any comment. They might disagree. They might say, well, we don't think that's common good. Or they might say, well, you haven't included this, this and this. That's really what the purpose, in my mind, of the consultation is. Let's see what else is out there that we maybe haven't thought of. I mean, we've all had our heads together, but there will probably be something. And it could well be that is as well. It could also be that we haven't, for whatever reason, investigated because it's not immediately apparent. So any register that is subsequently established is very much a living document, and things may get included in it as time goes by. I've detailed in paragraph 5 what the process for the public consultation is. It's a 12-week public process. They have access to it for 12 weeks. You have to give notification not just to community councils but to community bodies, any community body, and this is a very, very wide and general requirement, and it can literally, the guidance literally says it could be anything as wide as local football clubs to anything as specific as local historic societies. Identifying and finding the contact details for those community bodies and trying to locate them and inform them can be quite difficult. And we generally encourage any group that I do notify to spread the information as far and wide so we get as many responses as possible. Once we get the responses in, we have to investigate them. The idea is that we should be able to respond to that within a further 12-week period. That is all contingent on the amount of responses we get. We didn't publish for a significant period of time after the 12 weeks when we went out on the wider Highland funds. That was simply as a result of the volume of inquiries in one particular area. That was without the difficulties that we have with COVID. If we get a lot of inquiries in respect of Wick, I suspect that 12-week period will have to be extended. But at least if the investigations are taking place with whatever information we can access, in respect of the other investigations I did, the things like the archive centres were an absolute gift for council minutes. That might be tricky at the moment, given how we're all on limited staffing and so forth. But we will do the best that we can to investigate any information that comes in. We have to publish the representations, we have to publish our investigations, and we have to publish our decision. Once we've fully investigated something, our decision is final, and we will provide the explanation as to why we either think something is or isn't common good after that, and then our decision is final. Unless any new information comes to light, and that's always a possibility. But it just saves the council being repeatedly asked the same question over and over again, as has happened in another area already. There are practical things that we're considering and we're looking at the moment. Clearly, the funds that we've already gone to consultation on, that were already there and operating as common good funds across the Highlands, had with them the accounts, the funds of money, the systems already in place. Wick won't have that. Wick will acquire, hopefully, property assets, but there isn't a liquid monetary fund coming with those assets. Therefore, there will have to be consideration on income generation, how we can use the assets to maximise the benefit of the fund. And slowly, hopefully, that fund will start to accumulate an income. And that income then can be reinvested, can be used for the benefit of the community in some way. Clearly, and it's already been highlighted by finance, that one of the issues may come up that if we establish a common good fund in Wick, that potentially the services that are already looking after those assets might rub their hands in glee and think they're no longer going to be responsible for them. There is no legal requirement that the responsibility shifts immediately to the common good. It's quite simply in practice the case, but that won't be able to happen until the common good fund is in funds. All of the property is council property. It's just that with it being property of the former borough of Wick and common good property, it has to be accounted for separately. That's for something for us to work through, and we will keep you informed as that progresses. It's one of those chicken and egg situations. Until we've established that Wick has a common good fund, we can't do the other side of it. and so all we can do at the moment is get as far on that process as we can, try and be forewarned for anything that might come up, and try and be prepared for what we need to do, and just view it in a very positive light. I mean, it's a great thing for Wick. We're rolling out and investigating as we can the other boroughs. There is only one of me. I'm doing the best I can. I have made some progress on Thurso, although I will confess to say that we've got a number of issues arising in Caithness, where people are madly trying to either acquire or sell property that's sort of caused that to leapfrog over a little bit. We do have to get the Caithness ones sorted out, so I have had to sort of focus some of my spare time on Caithness. But it's just a case of trying to get through. I have boxes of these sitting here in my room at home with me that get dusted off and read through when I get a spare moment. So I think those members that are aware of the amount of work that's gone on the Wick list so far will appreciate how long that alone has taken. So we are making progress. That's what I would like to assure members, is that we're making progress. So I think that's all I would like to say on that. It is fully detailed in the report, and there is a lot of information that can be seen on the website for what we've done in previous consultations, so you can see how we've handled things there. And I think it's a case of this will be quite new, so whenever there's any questions, whether within committees or out with committees, then it's nothing that we can't give our mind to and answer as quickly as we possibly can. So I think I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Sarah. And as you've alluded to, I think this is very clearly the beginning of the process, and a lot of work still to be done. But thank you for what you've done so far. I've got Councillor Bremner and then Councillor Andrew Sinclair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sarah, because yet another good news story for Caithness, and another good news, particularly a good news story for Wick. Loads of in our meeting today, and I'm not going to go on your report, Sarah. Thanks very much. That has been a ton of fantastic work. Long overdue, not your issue. You've applied yourself brilliantly to this. In fact, we've been very excited at the way that you have applied yourself to this, and come up with a whole list of stuff. When for years we'd been told that Wick doesn't have any common good fund or any common good assets. But let's not go back over that, because that'll be talked about for years to come, about what's been in the past and what might we have lost, and what all those arguments can be taken on by others. We've been through that. What I would like to say, though, is that the councillors of Wick and East Caithness, from the day that we went out to look around the town to see what we could do in terms of our commitment to improving the town centre regeneration, and we considered there was a town, that there was always a common good fund or a common good land. We've even raised that several times when we've tried to dispose of assets that we believe that we could have, should have been putting those asset funds into a common good fund. And it wasn't until finally we talked about car park charges in the car park at the riverside, and then we said, well, hang on, we're hearing so many people coming back to us telling us that how can we do that, because it's a car park, it's land that is common, to people of Wick, and that we had to get clarification from. And unlike areas in the Highland Council, we started finding out that maybe it is actually common good land. That's what actually kicked this off, and here we are today. Councillor Sinclair said there just now, Nicola Sinclair said, we are just at the start, and I've got that triple underlined here. This is just the start. This is a start of a process where the public can now engage. But they can also acknowledge the fact that we've actually held to this. We've looked to see if there is we've never gone given up on it, and we are where we are because we've all committed to getting to that point. And I'd like us to be on record to acknowledging that. That's been a lot of work and a lot of perseverance in the face of folk denying that there was such a thing as a common good fund in Wick. There is. not a common good fund, common good assets. In terms of common good fund, well, we shall see how that manages to materialise. When you said about the liquid there's no liquid monetary fund, and we're now going to have a look at it, see how it can manage to make income generation. Sometimes we hear that common good funds are actually a bane for communities. Let's hope not with this one. Let's hope that this works for the community. And thanks again for all the work that you've undertaken there just now. One question when you were mentioning there just now about income generation. How will that be undertaken? Well, who will look to move that forward when we get to the end of this process? How is that going to be looked at, the income generation factor?
I think once we're in the process of once we've gone through the consultation process and we can actually say that what we've got then is a recognised list of common good assets, I think what you have to do then is we have to have some sort of focus at the moment. Well, it all got put on hold slightly at the moment, but in Inverness we've been starting to work on strategic workshops with a view to workshopping the type of assets that were there, what we could do. We were doing that in some of the other areas as well. So trying to look very much more in what's needed in the modern times, because a lot, obviously, common good is historic, and there's an awful attitude that things are, it's just going to sit there and it's just going to do what it's always done. But moving forward, a lot of the buildings are old buildings in the Highland Common Good Fund portfolios. They all need maintenance. There's communities that need support and need assistance and would like to be able to access that by way of grants when the funds have got money in them. And it's about looking how best those assets can start to generate income for the benefit of the fund. And it is very much something that has to be looked at strategically. So what I would say on that is it's the sort of thing where you identify perhaps officers that you wish to discuss with, and it's maybe workshopped with what can be done, and then in due course a report can be brought to committee for the appropriate decision making to be made with all the relevant lines of governance, because it is about starting to look forward for what can be done with the assets, and sort of focusing on how they can be made to work. You mentioned car parking, and I appreciate that's all gone on hold a little bit, but car parking is one of the ones across the Highlands that will have some potential income generation for a number of places as far as common good is concerned. It's maybe unfortunate the whole discussion of how that would take place has sort of had to shelve a little bit in the current circumstances, but I don't think it's gone away completely. But there may be other situations once we know exactly what those assets are. Is there scope for rental payments? What's the situation on occupation of buildings? All sorts of things that we would need to look into. But we need to establish assets first, as to say, really, before we can decide what we do with them.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Can I come to Councillor Sinclair now, please?
Thank you, Chair. Raymond said a lot of what I had intended to say, really, and that was to thank Sarah and also Paul, who is, I don't think he's here today, but I know the two of you have put in a Herculean amount of work to make this, to get to where we are today. And I suppose I just wanted to put on record, really, that on behalf of myself, but I'm sure my three colleagues, how grateful we are for everything that you've done. You said, Sarah, at the end there that you're only one person, but quite frankly, I think we've all been quite impressed, really, by the work that you've done. You've had to dredge your way through mountains of centuries-old documents and maps and piece together charts and make sense of what is quite a complicated picture. It's self-evident that it's a complicated picture by virtue of the fact that it's taken this long to establish that there is common good again. I think just on behalf of all of us, just wanted to express how grateful we are. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sinclair, and I would absolutely echo that. Councillor Rosie.
Good afternoon, Sarah, and thank you for your presentation. I'm sure you're aware that I'm from Ward 2, so I've obviously been aware of the work you've done with Ward 3 colleagues, and I'm absolutely conscious of the fact that you said you are a sole post holder and the work that all of that involves. So really, it's fantastic. So I already have an understanding of the difference between a common good fund and assets, and that'll be useful going forward. I guess, as councillors, it's a duty to explore and identify opportunities for our communities. Is there a need for us as Ward 2 councillors to make a formal request of any kind to have further investigations done? Is that appropriate, or just look to see what your guidance is on that? So thank you.
No, there's no need for a formal request. The post, part of what the post covers anyway, is to investigate any and establish any common good property across the Highlands. It's a pan-Highland post. We have a statutory responsibility anyway. As soon as the Community Empowerment Act came out, we have a statutory responsibility to establish common good registers. That sits within the ambit of my post anyway, so it's covered in the job description. It's not a problem. The simple thing is time. It can take time just to find out about even the smallest piece of land. Sometimes it's a jigsaw puzzle of lots of different deeds. It's fascinating, but it does take time. But yes, so there's no need for a formal request. Sitting on the list behind the WIC ones that we've established, and once we go out to consultation, that's great. That will then run on its own time scale. Meanwhile, as I said, I then started to work through some of the Thurso deeds, but sheer necessity at the moment has caused me now to focus on King UC. So we have King UC and Granton. At some point in the future, Fort William will come into play as well for investigation, because that was a borough. Basically, any borough across the Highlands that isn't at the moment considered to have common good will fall under the ambit of that investigation, statutory investigation, and therefore is already well within my post anyway, so that's not a problem.
Thanks, Sarah. I think if we could just make a note as part of the minutes of this committee meeting that the intention is to do a similar investigation from Thurso as time and resources permit, that would be really helpful. And in terms of my own comments as a Ward 3 councillor, it's just really good to see this paper coming before Caithness Area Committee, because as my colleagues have said, it does resolve a very, very long-running dispute in the town of Wick, and particularly some of the residents who remember back to the old Caithness district days and have always vehemently said that we have common good assets. So it's good to see that recognised in writing here today at a public meeting, and the use of the word misclassification of assets. We are recognising that this is something that Highland Council is now putting right, and that's a very important step forward for Wick. Again, yeah, thank you for the time and effort you've put into the investigations. I know you had boxes and boxes of paperwork home with you when we went into lockdown, and it's nice to see how enthusiastic you both are about it. Paul is really quite ecstatic about dusty old bits of paper, which is beyond me, but you must have an awful lot of patience and attention to detail. So going forward, I think the really important thing is that we manage this to the benefit of the town. We've had a lot of useful conversations with yourself and Paul, and we know that not every common good fund is actually beneficial to the area. Inverness is relatively rare in the way that they've managed to make it work for them. So it's really incumbent on us to structure it in a very effective way and to be really canny about how we manage it going forward. And that absolutely has to be done in very close partnership with the public, because there will be a huge amount of local interest in this, and it's important that they are all able to make their views known. One of the things we'll have a difficult time with is going into a 12-week consultation in the middle of COVID. As soon as we found out about the common good land, we said that we would have a public meeting so that people could ask their questions, and for obvious reasons we can't do that now. So I would like to ask you to consider whether there is an opportunity to have a webinar or some kind of virtual public meeting, and possibly in addition whether we could have some kind of ready to go FAQ document, because I can immediately see that the questions that the public are going to ask are going to be around the ongoing maintenance of the buildings, revenue income, potential rents, the impact that will have on the car parking consultation. And I think it is really important that we see all this as a positive development, but also that we are quick to respond to what will inevitably be a lot of questions from the general public. So if we could have a further conversation about this going forward, about how we structure that public consultation to make sure that people have ample opportunity to contribute, especially because it will also go over the Christmas period, so we'll lose a little bit of time when people go into the Christmas holidays. So yeah, just to conclude, thank you to yourself and Paul for your efforts, and I think this is a really important moment for the town, and hopefully we can make it work. Do any other members want to come in on this item? No. Okay, so the committee is invited to note the contents of the list of quotation on the list of proposed property in accordance with the Community Empowerment Act 2015. Are you happy to note and agree those recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, I think that concludes today's business. Thank you very much everyone for joining. It's been a long meeting, so go and get some lunch now.